Chapter 3849. The red-haired old man looked at Li Feng, nodded and praised. You are very powerful. Li Feng pouted. He was extremely unhappy. If it weren't for this armor, this old man would definitely have died on the spot. The red-haired old man glanced at Yin Xiang, then at Li Feng and smiled. I thought he was the only monster in the Sky Cloud realm, but I didn't expect there to be two more. Unfortunately, they are not from the Divine Kingdom. What kind of monster are we? The real monsters haven't made a move yet. Li Feng pouted. However, he didn't say this out loud. After all, the powerhouses of the Divine Kingdom hadn't appeared in large numbers yet. They had to hide some of their strength. The red-haired old man shook his head and sighed. Since you are not from the Divine Kingdom, I can only send you to hell to prevent you from becoming a disaster for the Divine Kingdom in the future. You think so highly of us. Li Feng chuckled, and his eyes turned cold. He said contemptuously, but I don't think you have the ability to kill us. Haha. Then why don't you try and see if you can break through the defense of my thunder battle armor? The red-haired old man laughed again. You think you have the right to be arrogant in front of me just because you have some tricks? It was ridiculous to the extreme. Boom. Before he finished speaking, he activated his 3 strongest laws and charged toward Li Feng. Who is the arrogant one? This is the Sky Cloud realm, not the Divine Kingdom. Do you really think that you can sweep through our Sky Cloud realm with your strength alone? You think too highly of yourself. Princess Huofeng's eyes turned cold. Fire Phoenix Divine Jade, Phoenix Bell, go and help Li Feng kill that old man. Let him taste the price of being arrogant in the Sky Cloud realm. Clang. The Fire Phoenix Divine Jade, Fire Phoenix Saber, Fire Phoenix Spear, Fire Phoenix Divine Axe, Black Ice Divine Hammer, Black Ice Divine Bow, Black Sky Divine Sword, Black Sky Fan, Phoenix Bell, and Frost Sparrow Sword all charged out of Princess Huofeng's body. Demon Vanquishing Staff, Illusory Demon Orb, go too, the Blood Ancestor said, his eyes flashing with killing intent. As he spoke, the Illusory Demon Orb and the 2 Sovereign Divine Weapons also rushed out like lightning. The Fire Phoenix Sword didn't make a move and continued to protect everyone. However, even without the Flaming Phoenix Sword, there were still 12 Sovereign's Divine Weapons. The red-haired old man stared blankly at the 12 Dominator Divine Weapons charging at him. How could the divine weapons of the various forces of the Sky Cloud realm be in the hands of these juniors? Understood. The various forces of the Sky Cloud realm handed over their respective sovereign divine weapons to their juniors. This way, these juniors would be able to obtain even more fortunes in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Because of this, when the Divine Kingdom descended upon the Sky Cloud realm, the Sky Cloud realm didn't even have a sovereign weapon. Without a sovereign divine weapon, there was no way they could fight against the Divine Kingdom. Therefore, the various giants of the Sky Cloud realm fled the Sky Cloud realm with the living beings and resources of the Sky Cloud realm. So this was the reason why the people of the Divine Kingdom didn't see a single person when they came to the Sky Cloud realm. This old bastard should be in existence on the same level as the 10 great demon kings. Wrong. He's even stronger than the 10 great demon kings. After all, he has an armor. Haha. Stronger than the 10 great demon kings? Wouldn't it be great if we could kill him? Brothers, let's kill him. Die, old bastard. The group of Dominator Divine Weapons, especially the Illusory Demon Orb and the Demon Vanquishing Staff from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. The Dominator Divine Weapons like the Flaming Phoenix and the Godly Jade were still somewhat fearful because they had fought the Divine Kingdom in the past and knew how powerful the Divine Kingdom was. However, the Illusory Demon Orb and the other Dominator Divine Weapons were different. No matter how strong the Divine Kingdom was, could it be stronger than the Divine King of the Primal Chaos and the Primal Chaos Royal City? Anyway, it was over. This scene made the red-haired old man unable to remain calm. He looked at the Thunder Battle Axe and shouted, "Retreat first." You want to retreat? No way. Yin Xiang shouted coldly as he led the Yin-Yang Mirror and the other Dominator Divine Weapons to entangle the Thunder Battle Axe. Li Feng also led the 3 true bodies of the puppets and the Illusory Demon Orb and the other Dominator Divine Weapons to attack the red-haired old man. The red-haired old man activated his 3 ultimate profound meanings but it was meaningless as he was directly crushed. With this little strength, you dare to come to our sky cloud realm and act like a tyrant? I really don't know who gave you the courage. Now go to hell and repent. Li Feng sneered. His own ultimate profound meanings, the 3 true bodies of the puppets, and the illusory demon orb and the other 12 Dominator divine weapons instantly drowned the red-haired old man. Ah! A miserable scream sounded. Although the red-haired old man's armor was a mid-level Dominator divine weapon, in the face of such a terrifying attack, cracks immediately appeared on it. The red-haired old man was even more miserable. His body was almost torn apart, and blood stained the sky. The masked Azura roared. Kill him and leave the Thunder Battle Axe and Thunder Battle Armor. These were mid-level Dominator divine weapons. If they could forcefully subdue them, it would be a great thing for the Sky Cloud realm. Even if they couldn't subdue them, they had to destroy them. Because once these 2 Dominator divine weapons escaped back to the Divine Kingdom, they would definitely threaten them again in the future. In short, if they couldn't be subdued, then they had to be destroyed. Preposterous. I really didn't expect that you could actually force me to this point. You guys are quite capable. However, you want to kill me with trash like you? It's simply wishful thinking. The red-haired old man's face was ferocious, and his entire body was overflowing with hostility. Boom. The next moment, a sword light swept out from between his eyebrows. This world was instantly annihilated, turning into chaos. Its sharpness was simply unheard of. In an instant, everyone present, as well as all the Dominator divine weapons, felt a fatal threat. What is this? Before they could react, the sword light blasted towards the illusory demon orb and the other Dominator divine weapons. A group of Dominator divine weapons were blasted away on the spot. The ultimate profound meanings of Li Feng and the 3 skeletons also instantly dissipated. So strong? Everyone's eyes trembled. Following closely, the sword light attacked Yin Xiang, the Yin-Yang mirror, and the other Dominator divine weapons. Just like before, Yin Xiang and the 9 Dominator divine weapons were blasted away. The 9 Dominator divine weapons were still fine, but Yin Xiang was spurting blood from anger, and his eyebrows were filled with weakness. Because of this, the Thunder Battle Axe broke free and rushed to the red-haired old man's side like lightning. Just you wait. The experts of the Divine Kingdom will soon descend upon the Sky Cloud realm. All of you will die. The red-haired old man sneered and rushed towards the gate of the Divine Kingdom without looking back. Stop. Li Feng roared. He was about to chase after him. But at this moment, the sword light once again attacked them. They had no choice. The Yin-Yang mirror, the illusory demon orb, and the other 12 Dominator divine weapons could only join forces to resist the sword light. A total of 21 Dominator divine weapons fiercely collided with the sword light. The sword light finally shattered, but the Yin-Yang mirror and the other 21 Dominator divine weapons also showed signs of cracking. What the hell is this thing? Looking at the Dominator divine weapons, everyone's heart was in turmoil. This is too strong. After calming down, everyone looked up and saw that the red-haired old man had already disappeared into the gate of the Divine Kingdom. The strength of the Divine Kingdom is beyond imagination. I'm afraid that even I can't stop this old thing. But fortunately, we still have the Flame Magic Sword and Long Chen's Heavenly Sword. But now, the Flame Magic Sword hasn't been repaired yet. We can't fight the Divine Kingdom head-on. Let's quickly break the seal and meet up with Long Chen. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. The group nodded. Swish. Immediately, everyone rushed towards the core area. Azure Dragon flew with Yin Xiang and asked with concern. Xiang, are you okay? I'm fine. Yin Xiang shook his head and took out a divine elixir of life and swallowed it. He looked up at the gate of the Divine Kingdom, his eyes full of murderous intent. Don't be impulsive. The most important thing now is to find the Feather Emperor and the others, Azure Dragon said. Don't worry, I won't do anything rash. Yin Xiang put away his murderous intent and smiled at Azure Dragon. In less than 10 breaths, they returned to the core area again. Hurry up and leave. The experts of the Divine Kingdom will be here soon. The voice of the Princess of the Divine Kingdom sounded. Let's go together. Qin Feiyang smiled. Go together? The princess of the divine kingdom was stunned and said anxiously, "You can't break the seal with just these sovereign divine weapons." "Then I'll add my sovereign divine weapon." Qin Feiyang smiled and waved his hand. The sword of Thanatos, cauldron of all things, edgeless heavy sword, and other sovereign divine weapons appeared one after another. What? The princess of the divine kingdom was shocked. He had so many sovereign divine weapons. "Everyone, please." Qin Feiyang looked at the group of sovereign divine weapons and said sincerely, "Now, only the combined forces of all the sovereign divine weapons could break the seal here. We'll do our best." The sovereign divine weapons also saw the power of the seal, but they didn't pat their chests and promise. At that moment, dozens of sovereign divine weapons rushed into the sky and awakened without reservation. Even the Fire Phoenix sword went to help. Actually, the Fire Phoenix sword, Fire Phoenix Divine Jade, and Xiantian Divine Sword didn't want to help, because when the princess of the divine kingdom was sealed, they also had a part in it. And they also knew that the entire Fire Phoenix clan, including Feng Ho, definitely didn't want to see the princess of the divine kingdom escape. But now, they couldn't do anything, because they had to listen to Princess Huofeng. They had to do whatever Princess Huofeng told them to do, or they would be erased by the blood oath. There were 8 sovereign divine weapons in the burial ground, plus the yin-yang mirror, a total of 9 sovereign divine weapons. Princess Huofeng had 11 sovereign divine weapons. The blood ancestor also had 2 sovereign divine weapons. In addition to Qin Feiyang's sovereign divine weapon, Horsedale Whisk, Grim Reaper's sword, Golden Crow Pearl, Golden Dragon Spear, White Dragon Sword, Blood Dragon Blade, Black Dragon Mirror, Ice Phoenix Sword, All Creation Cauldron, Golden Sun Divine Sword, Silver Moon Divine Sword, Edgeless Heavy Sword, Heavenly Star Divine Sword, and Void Mirror. There was also the White-Eyed Wolf's Ghost, the Divine King's Throne, and the Crimson Dragon Shield. Even the Green Cauldron, the Golden Bell, and the Ancient Pagoda were there. Even if the ancient castle wasn't there, there were more than 40 sovereign divine weapons in total, which was more than the number of sovereign divine weapons used to seal the princess of the divine kingdom. Because back then, the 3 major clans had a total of 30 sovereign divine weapons, including the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord. It was only equivalent to 33 sovereign divine weapons. Wasn't this more than enough to break the seal? Boom. As the group of sovereign divine weapons attacked, a dazzling barrier suddenly appeared in the sky above the core area. This barrier was the seal. Chapter 3850. As the dozens of sovereign divine weapons crazily crushed, the barrier continued to distort and tremble. Crack! Finally, with a loud bang, a crack appeared on the indestructible barrier. It works! Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. But at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly surged out of the Divine Kingdom's gate in the sky. Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked and immediately looked up at the gate of the Divine Kingdom. Although they hadn't seen anyone yet, it wasn't difficult to judge from the terrifying aura that at least a dozen experts were about to arrive at the Sky Cloud realm. Quick! The Blood Ancestor urged. Of course, the sovereign divine weapons didn't dare to be negligent. A red-haired old man was already so strong, let alone a dozen experts of the Divine Kingdom. What they feared the most was the Sword Light. If the Sword Light reappeared later, none of them would be able to escape. Boom! The sovereign divine weapons once again concentrated their firepower and blasted at a point. This point was the place where the crack had appeared before. Terrifying divine power rushed at the crack like a torrent. With a loud crack, the seal finally reached its limit and broke on the spot. As the seal broke, the thunder and storm inside immediately roared out, exuding a destructive aura. The sovereign divine weapons once again forcibly suppressed the thunder and storm. Whoosh! At the same time, a dragon shadow appeared from the thunder and lightning. This was a purple-gold divine dragon, about 10 feet long. There was no trace of blood on its body, but between its eyebrows, there was a sense of weakness. Moreover, her body also seemed a little blurry. Obviously, the princess of the Divine Kingdom was now in the form of a divine soul. And it was an incomplete divine soul. Sister-in-law. The Blood Ancestor hurriedly greeted her, his old face full of joy. She is the princess of the divine kingdom, the real purple gold divine dragon. Princess Huofeng sized up the dragon's soul. Although she was the eldest princess of the Fire Phoenix clan, and was loved by Feng Ho, she had never been to the land of the buried gods before and naturally had never seen a purple gold divine dragon. In the past, like everyone else, the purple gold divine dragon was a legendary existence in her eyes. It could be said that, aside from people like the blood ancestor who were in the know, most people believed that the purple gold divine dragon was just a legend that didn't exist in this world. One could imagine, now that they were witnessing the birth of a purple gold divine dragon with their own eyes, it was a huge blow to their souls. Especially Qin Feiyang. This was because the princess of the divine kingdom was not just a purple gold divine dragon in his eyes. She was also his family. Especially at the moment when the seal was broken, the feeling of blood being thicker than water was especially strong. Then he looked at the princess of the divine kingdom. After escaping, she looked around at this familiar world and the blood ancestor's face that she hadn't seen in a long time. She felt as if she was in a dream. I've made you suffer. The blood ancestor looked at the princess of the divine kingdom, his face full of grief and indignation. If not for the fact that the Dragon King and the other two had not betrayed them and attacked them from behind, how could he and the Feather Emperor have left their home? How could the human sovereign fall? How could the princess of the divine kingdom have been sealed for so many years? If not, Qin Batian would not have been sent to the Great Qin, and the descendants of the Qin clan like Qin Feiyang would not have had to wander around and suffer so much. All of this was because of the Dragon King, and the other two. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. The princess of the divine kingdom shook her head and sighed. Compared to what you've experienced all these years, what I've suffered is nothing. It's just that I pity my child. He has been uprooted from his home ever since he was born, and has never enjoyed a day of fatherly and motherly love. Don't worry. Qin Batian is living very well now. The blood ancestor comforted her. Really? The princess of the divine kingdom looked at the blood ancestor in surprise. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He looked at the blood ancestor in surprise and asked, "Ancestor, do you know where the ancestors are?" He had always wondered where the two ancestors had gone. Why had there been no news at all after so many years? But at this moment, judging from the blood ancestor's tone, he seemed to know where the two ancestors were. Of course. The blood ancestor nodded. Then where are they? Qin Feiyang hurriedly asked. There. The blood ancestor was about to speak. But then, the gate of the divine kingdom in the sky was accompanied by a terrifying energy, and a dozen people descended. Let's go. The princess of the divine kingdom was startled and hurriedly shouted. Li Feng immediately waved his hand, and a space-time portal was opened. Then, a group of people rushed into the portal without looking back. The seal was broken? They're really capable. The leader was a middle-aged man in golden armor. He was 7 feet tall and as straight as a pine tree. His thick black eyebrows were as sharp as swords, giving him an astonishing sharpness. His face was rough and his eyes were deep. There was a domineering aura between his eyebrows. He glanced at the core area below, and then looked at the space-time portal that Qin Feiyang and the others had escaped through. He pointed his index finger in the air, and the power of law suddenly appeared on his fingertip, turning into a giant wave that surged toward the portal. Boom! In an instant, with a loud bang, the space-time portal was shattered. But he didn't see Qin Feiyang and the others. Obviously, they had been teleported away. Find them. The middle-aged man in golden armor waved his hand, and the dozen people immediately scattered and disappeared without a trace. Skycloud Island. Long Chen stood on the top of the mountain and looked at the space-time rift suspended above with a frown. What was more strange was that for some reason, the Sea Lion Emperor and the others were attacking the space-time rift together. Buzz. Suddenly, a space-time rift appeared in the void behind him. Long Chen turned his head and saw Qin Feiyang and the others running out awkwardly. Long Chen's pupils shrank when he found that there was a purple gold divine dragon beside Qin Feiyang and the others. If he guessed correctly, she should be the princess of the divine kingdom. Qin Feiyang and the others ran out of the space-time rift, and found that Long Chun and the others were still on the top of the mountain. They were stunned. What's going on? Why didn't you go to Hades? Li Feng asked. The Sea Lion Emperor and the others stopped, and turned to look at Qin Feiyang and the others. Their faces were full of anger, but when they saw the princess of the Divine Kingdom, a trace of joy appeared on their faces. They quickly bowed and saluted. Greetings, Madam of the Human Emperor. No need to be so polite. The princess of the Divine Kingdom smiled. Madam of the Human Emperor? She is the wife of the Human Emperor, the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Tan Wu and the others were curious. Qin Feiyang looked at the space-time rift and walked to Long Chun and asked, "What's going on?" Long Chun said in a deep voice, "This space-time rift seems to have collapsed." What? It has collapsed? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes. When we came here and wanted to go in, we found that we couldn't. At first, I thought that Little Rabbit and the others might have joined forces to seal this rift when they left to prevent the experts of the Divine Kingdom from entering the lower realm, to commit crimes like they did in the past. But when I thought about it, even if they joined forces to seal the rift, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to stop the experts of the Divine Kingdom. So in the end, I guess that they must have collapsed the rift. Because only by collapsing the rift can they completely stop the experts of the Divine Kingdom. Long Chun said. Collapse the rift? Although collapsing the rift can indeed prevent the Divine Kingdom from entering the lower realm, at the same time, won't it also block their way back? Azure Dragon was surprised. Block their way back? Yin Xiang was stunned. That's right. If this rift has really collapsed, then they will never be able to return to the Sky Cloud realm. Azure Dragon nodded. Then we can't go to Hades now, right? Yin Xiang was stunned. Yes. Azure Dragon nodded again. How could they do something like cutting off their own path of retreat? Yin Xiang raised his eyebrows. It can't be helped. If they didn't collapse the rift, I'm afraid the experts of the Divine Kingdom would have already killed their way to the lower realm. However, from the current situation, we can at least be sure that they have indeed gone to Hades' hell. And the situation is better than we expected. Qin Feiyang sized up the space-time rift. If the rift collapsed, how could they meet up with Feather Emperor and the others? Yes. Originally, we speculated that not only them, but also the experts of the Divine Kingdom had entered Hades' hell. But now, it seems that the experts of the Divine Kingdom didn't go down. Not to mention anything else, at least they are safe for now. And something worth celebrating is that the first and second levels of the Divine Realm, the Ancient Realm, and Great Qin haven't been implicated. Long Chun nodded. After saying that, he looked at Qin Feiyang. Because Qin Feiyang was most worried about Great Qin and the Ancient Realm. Suddenly, the purple gold divine dragon looked at Long Chun and asked, "You are Long Chun, right?" Yes. Long Chun nodded and looked at the purple gold divine dragon with a trace of respect on his face. "You are indeed an outstanding young man. Indeed, as you speculated, they have indeed gone to Hades' hell, and they have indeed collapsed this rift in order to prevent the experts of the Divine Kingdom from entering the lower realm and wreaking havoc." The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. Everyone looked at the princess of the Divine Kingdom. There will be signs in advance of the arrival of the Divine Kingdom's gate, so when the signs appeared, Feather Emperor immediately came to find me. He told me that the sovereign divine weapons of the Sky Cloud realm all followed you to the Sky Bell divine treasure. With the current strength of the Sky Cloud realm, it is impossible to clash with the Divine Kingdom. So after a discussion with the Dragon King, Feng Ho, the Qilin Lord and the Little Rabbit, he had no choice but to make a difficult decision. That is to transfer all the living beings of the Sky Cloud realm to Hades' hell, and destroy the only rift to prevent the people of the Divine Kingdom from pursuing. The princess of the Divine Kingdom explained. The Azure Dragon sighed and said, "Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I can imagine how painful and helpless they were when they made this decision." Yes, the Divine Kingdom's target is not only the Sky Cloud realm, but also the other continents. Just as you said, the Ancient Realm and Great Qin are both targets of their conquest. The Sky Cloud realm is undoubtedly the first line of defense. If the Sky Cloud realm can't withstand the invasion of the Divine Kingdom, then the other continents can't. They don't want to give up, but for the sake of the world, they have no choice. However, Feather Emperor also told me that they have a trump card. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom said. A trump card? Qin Feiyang and the others were surprised. That's right. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said, the key is you. Me. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang again. Chapter 38:51. Yes. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded and asked, do you still remember the situation you encountered in this passage when you came to the Tianyan realm? Qin Feiyang recalled a little and nodded. I remember. Back then, Elder Hai and Pei Wanli went to the Great Qin Empire and kidnapped my wife, the Mermaid Princess. When I entered the passage, I found that they were intercepted by Elder Hua, so I joined forces with Elder Hua to kill Pei Wanli and Elder Hai. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom asked. Then do you remember the badge you got from them? Badge. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He tried hard to recall for a moment. Suddenly, he patted his head and quickly rummaged through the universe ring. Soon, he found a badge. This badge was as big as a baby's fist. It was as if it was cast from gold foil. It was flowing with light and color, and there was a divine dragon pattern engraved on it. Back then, when he had obtained the badge, he had asked the little rabbit about it. The little rabbit said that it was a hot potato and advised him to throw it away quickly. However, at that time he didn't trust the little rabbit, so he didn't throw it away and kept it with him. Qin Feiyang held the badge and looked at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. Are you talking about this? Yes. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded. What's so special about this badge? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. But at this time, Long Chen stared at the badge and frowned. Why does it have father's aura? Your father's aura? When Qin Feiyang heard this, he immediately looked at Long Chen in surprise. Why didn't he feel the aura of the ice dragon? Long Chen stepped forward and took the badge from Qin Feiyang's hand. After carefully observing for a moment, he nodded and said, it does have father's aura, but it is very weak. If it weren't for my blood connection with him, I wouldn't have sensed it. So this badge was made by your father? Qin Feiyang frowned. I don't know. I haven't seen it either. Long Chen shook his head. This badge, regardless of whether it was created by his father or not, cannot be ignored because it has the ability to block all rules, said the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. What? Blocking all rules? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. That's right. In other words, as long as you have this badge, you can ignore all rules. Back then, when Little Rabbit saw this badge, the reason why she told you to throw it away was because this badge had a heaven-defying ability and belonged to the ice dragon. She was afraid that if you kept it by your side, you would be killed. But what's strange is that the ice dragon hasn't come to you to retrieve this badge all these years. After the Princess of the Divine Kingdom finished speaking, she looked at Long Chen suspiciously. Don't look at me. Although I am his biological son, I don't know him at all. Long Chen shook his head and smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyang asked, you mean to say that we can use this badge to block the rules and directly teleport to the underworld? That's right. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded and said, and this badge also has the ability to repair this passage. Repair the passage? Everyone immediately stared at the badge in Qin Feiyang's hand. It was indeed a way out. Qin Feiyang was also very excited. Heaven never bars one's way out. He finally understood why Old Hai and Pei Wanli could interfere with the rules of the miracle. The reason was because of this badge. Speaking of which, the ice dragon was really willing to spend a lot of money. In order to deal with him, he actually gave such a precious thing to Pei Wanli, a playboy. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom said, although the passage can be repaired, I advise you not to do it now because at present, you don't have the strength to contend with the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, looked at everyone and said, since the passage can't be repaired now, let's go to the underworld and meet up with everyone first. Okay. No one present objected. How do we do it? Qin Feiyang looked at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and asked. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom said, Drip blood on it to recognize its master and revive it. Drip blood to recognize its master? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. If you don't drip blood to recognize its master, it can't be revived. If it can't be revived, it can only exert the ability to interfere with the rules, but it can't completely block the rules. The princess of the divine kingdom nodded. Is there such a thing? Qin Feiyang frowned, cut his finger, and a drop of purple gold dragon blood appeared and dripped on the badge. However, this drop of purple gold dragon blood was not absorbed by the badge, and it didn't recognize its master. What's going on? Not only Qin Feiyang, but everyone was stunned. The princess of the divine kingdom said in surprise, "Does it still have a master now?" "It has a master." Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. Hearing this, he couldn't help but recall what happened when he found this badge in Pei Wanli's universe ring. At that time, he, the mermaid princess, the white-eyed wolf, the blood Kirin, and other beasts looked at this badge with curiosity. Just as they released their divine sense and poured it into the badge to check it out, a mysterious force suddenly emerged, and the group of them was severely injured. Could it be that the source of the mysterious power was the blood contract hidden in the badge? Just as Qin Feiyang was thinking, Yun Xiang, Li Feng, and the others released their divine sense and poured it into the badge. No. Qin Feiyang noticed this scene and hurriedly spoke to stop it. But it was too late. Everyone's divine sense poured into the badge, and the familiar mysterious force appeared again. The divine sense of the group was directly shattered by that mysterious force. A trace of blood dripped from the corner of their mouth. What? Everyone was shocked. Qin Feiyang was also incomparably shocked. Back then, his cultivation had just reached the half-step invincible realm, so it was reasonable for him to be injured by the mysterious force in the badge. But now everyone here was an expert with a perfect dominator's divine weapon. How could they be injured by this force? How strong was it? But at the same time, Long Chen stared at the badge, his eyes flashing. However, no one noticed this abnormality, not even Qin Feiyang. Azure Dragon frowned and said, "This should be the power of the blood contract, but whose blood contract is it?" The Sea Lion Emperor shook his head and said, "The blood contract doesn't contain the owner's aura, so it's impossible to tell." "Do you still need to think about it?" Qin Feiyang sneered and looked up at Long Chen. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at Long Chen, and they suddenly understood. Right. This badge was an ice dragon's item, so it must be the ice dragon's blood contract. Qin Feiyang looked at Long Chen and said, "I was wondering why your father could find me no matter where I went. So it was because of this badge." This badge had the ice dragon's blood contract, so the ice dragon could naturally sense the badge's location through the blood contract. Sensing the badge's location was equivalent to knowing his location. "This has nothing to do with me. Don't blame me." Long Chen was helpless. "Now is not the time to care about this. Quickly find a way to erase the ice dragon's blood contract, or else we can't go to hell." The princess of the divine kingdom said. "Old ancestor, who has the ability to erase the ice dragon's blood contract?" Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. If it could be erased, they wouldn't have been injured by the blood contract's power. Hearing this, everyone's hearts were filled with bitterness. "Let me try." Long Chen opened his mouth and looked at Qin Feiyang. "But if it's possible, then I won't return this badge to you." Qin Feiyang frowned. Long Chen might really be able to, although he didn't know where the ice dragon was now, because of the blood connection. When he sensed that Long Chen wanted to erase the badge's blood contract, as the father, the ice dragon naturally couldn't stop him. He might even take the initiative to dissolve the blood contract. However, this badge had the ability to block all rules. To be honest, he really couldn't bear to give it to Long Chen. Boom. At this time, an aura rolled over from the sea in the distance. Not good. They found their way here. Everyone's expression changed. Qin Feiyang's face sank slightly, and he made a prompt decision and threw the badge to Long Chen. Even if he didn't give it to him now, it wouldn't become his in the end, because the blood contract was still there. As long as the ice dragon was willing, he could take it back at any time. Long Chen grabbed the badge. Without using divine thought, He released a surge of divine dragon force into the badge and rushed toward the blood contract. Because the divine dragon force contained his aura, it could let the ice dragon sense it faster. Boom. Just like before, the blood contract erupted with a terrifying force, rushing toward Long Chen's divine dragon force. However, just as Long Chen's divine dragon force was about to be crushed, that mysterious force suddenly and quickly subsided. It seemed that the ice dragon had already sensed that it was Long Chen. Immediately after, the blood contract dissolved on its own. Subsequently, the master recognition ceremony was successfully completed. As expected of father and son, the treatment is indeed different. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Long Chen laughed dryly. Boom. That aura was getting closer and closer. The calm sea also set off huge waves that blotted out the sky. Let's go. Azure Dragon shouted. Long Chen retracted his gaze, and rays of dazzling divine light suddenly emerged from the badge. At this moment, Qin Feiyang could clearly feel that he was no longer restricted by this land, and had arrived outside of heaven and earth. The next moment, Long Chen waved his hand, and a space-time tunnel appeared. You guys go in first. Qin Feiyang looked at Azure Dragon and the others and shouted. Whoosh. What was there to be polite about? Everyone rushed into the space-time tunnel without looking back. Qin Feiyang, Long Chen, the blood ancestor, and the princess of the divine kingdom walked at the back. When they were about to enter the space-time tunnel, they turned their heads and looked at the sky above the sea in the distance. They saw a golden figure rushing toward them like lightning. It was accompanied by a terrifying divine sense. It was the middle-aged man in golden armor. When the divine thought reached Qin Feiyang and the others, the middle-aged man in golden armor immediately looked in their direction, and his speed instantly increased by several times. At the same time he shouted, Your Highness, please don't be so stubborn. You should go back and tell father this. If this continues, the divine kingdom will be destroyed in his hands sooner or later. The princess of the divine kingdom sighed, then turned around and led Qin Feiyang and the others into the space-time tunnel without looking back and disappeared. A few seconds later, the middle-aged man in golden armor landed in the sky above Sky Cloud Island and looked down at the space-time tunnel that was already disappearing. His face was full of anger. What kind of charm did this lowly civilization have to make the princess of the god nation so reluctant to part with it? What a bunch of damned ants. Chapter 3852. Nether King's Hell. This land was very unfamiliar to Princess Huofeng and the others. They had only heard of this place. But for Qin Feiyang, Tan Wu, Hell Godhound, and Fire Qilin, they were very familiar with it. Especially Qin Feiyang. He had entered Nether King's Hell more than once. And in Nether King's Hell, there were too many people he was familiar with. Like the guardian of the miracle, Fire Python. Like the ruler of Nether King's Hell, King Yu. There were also King Yu's subordinates, Shueda and Shui Air. It could be said that his return here was equivalent to returning to his own home. In a certain place, a giant mountain towered high into the sky. A space-time crack was suspended above the mountain peak. This was the entrance to the Sky Cloud realm. At this moment, on the mountain peak, there were 5 figures. In fact, the 4 of them were 3 men and 1 woman. They sat cross-legged on the mountain peak, and seemed to be cultivating with their eyes closed. However, their divine sense had been enveloping the surroundings. One of them was a white-haired man. One could clearly see his true appearance. His appearance was extraordinary and his temperament was otherworldly. His face was quite vicissitudes of life. The other 3 were shrouded in a mist, looking quite mysterious. Aside from the 4 of them, there was only a snow-white little rabbit left. It was lying on a huge rock, drinking from a jug of wine while looking at the space-time crack. There was a trace of worry between its brows that could not be dispelled. Obviously, they were the little rabbit, Feather Emperor, Dragon King Foam Ho, and the Qilin Lord, the 5 supergiants of the Sky Cloud realm. In addition to them, there was no one else around. In the mountains below, there were many fierce beasts. Without exception, these fierce beasts were all blood-red. Their eyes were also blood-red, and their ferocious aura was threatening. However, when they saw the little rabbit and Feather Emperor, Their eyes were filled with fear. None of the fierce beasts dared to approach them. Buzz. A space-time crack suddenly appeared in the void above. In an instant, Feather Emperor and the other three opened their eyes. The little rabbit also stopped drinking and looked up. The fierce beasts in the mountains below were no exception. They looked at the space-time crack in surprise. For a moment, this place fell into a dead silence. As time passed, a figure finally walked out of the space-time crack. It was Sea Lion Emperor. Little Lion? The little rabbit's body shook. Uncle Rabbit? When King Sea Lion heard the voice, he immediately looked at Little Rabbit with a look of surprise. Just as he was about to rush towards the little rabbit, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. A series of rule force whistled and blasted towards the Sea Lion Emperor. This was the power of the laws of hell. Here, no matter how strong your cultivation was, you could only suppress it to the great circle of the nine heavens realm. Otherwise, you would be killed by the rules. Unless one grasped the ultimate profundity of an ultimate law. Because he grasped the ultimate profundity of the strongest law, he could interfere with the rule power. However, the Sea Lion Emperor did not. He was immediately shocked. However, at this moment, a mysterious power surged out from the space-time tunnel and enveloped Sea Lion Emperor. The power of law immediately dissipated. It was the badge in Long Chen's hand. With the appearance of the Sea Lion Emperor, the others walked out of the passage one after another. Long Chen, Elder Qing, Shaolun. Whether it was the Feather Emperor, the Dragon King, the Qilin Master, or Feng Ho, they were all overjoyed at this moment. Finally, Qin Feiyang appeared. Qin Feiyang, the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit were undoubtedly even happier. However, a trace of killing intent appeared in the eyes of the Dragon King, and the other two. Bing Renning and the others had already told them about what Qin Feiyang had done in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. Thus, they had been filled with anger. He is Qin Feiyang? The fierce beasts below also looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. They were naturally no stranger to Qin Feiyang. Back then, the name Qin Feiyang had already spread throughout hell. Even if they had never seen him in person, they had heard of Qin Feiyang's deeds. It wasn't just the Ghost King Big Shui and the other commanders. Even the Hell King and the Guardians of Hell called Qin Feiyang brothers. What? You want to touch Qin Feiyang? Suddenly, accompanied by a murderous voice, the Blood Ancestor and the Princess of the Divine Kingdom both walked out of the passage. Shweta, sister-in-law. The Feather Emperor was taken aback and hurriedly greeted them in surprise. The eyes of the Dragon King and the other two sank slightly. As expected, Qin Feiyang still saved the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. They had already known about the existence of the Blood Ancestor when they entered the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. Moreover, they had also learned about the Blood Ancestor's deeds in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury from Bing Renning and the others. It seemed that he had already grasped the ultimate meaning of the law of death. As for the Blood Ancestor grasping the ultimate meaning of the law of time, they naturally didn't know, because this was something that had happened later. After all these years, you have all become stronger than before. However, I am no longer the same as before. Thanks to all of you, I might be even stronger than all of you now. Therefore, from now on, if anyone dares to touch Qin Feiyang and the others, I will slaughter their entire clan. The Blood Ancestor was extremely domineering. As soon as he appeared, he gave the Dragon King and the other two a show of strength. Is that so? I am really looking forward to it. How strong are you now? The Dragon King sneered, his tone containing a trace of killing intent. Sure, why don't you give it a try? The Blood Ancestor took a step forward and activated the law of death, the law of slaughter, and the law of time at the same time. The power of the three laws surged toward the Dragon King like angry waves. What? The Dragon King's pupils shrank. Although the Blood Ancestor hadn't activated the ultimate meaning, it wasn't difficult to distinguish the strength of the law power. It had already reached the level of the ultimate meaning. Feng Ho and the Qilin Master also had solemn expressions. The Little Rabbit and the Feather Emperor had playful looks on their faces. The Feather Emperor said, Shweta, it seems that you have gained a lot from this trip to the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. Of course. The blood ancestor smiled proudly. The little rabbit waved her paws and said, all right. Put away your arrogance. Now is not the time for internal strife. That's what you call arrogance. The blood ancestor glared at the little rabbit. Then he stared at the Dragon King trio and sneered before putting away the power of law. Feng Ho heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Princess Huofeng and said in a deep voice, the two of you come here. Her tone seemed to contain a trace of anger. Princess Huofeng and Daifuku suddenly felt uneasy. They had repeatedly helped Qin Feiyang in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, not to mention the dragons and the Qilin clan. Even Princess Huofeng's grandfather, Hua Dahong, would definitely tell Feng Ho immediately. If Feng Ho knew about this, would she let them off easily? Don't worry, we are here. Qin Feiyang saw the two's worry and transmitted his voice. Didn't you hear? Feng Ho said angrily. The two took a deep breath and braced themselves to walk toward Feng Ho. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Ho and said indifferently, let me give you a word of advice. Don't hurt them. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Feng Ho raised her head and looked at Qin Feiyang. After going to the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, he actually dared to openly provoke her? The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit were also very surprised. This little guy is no longer the little guy from back then. The blood ancestor smiled secretly. What do you mean? The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit were suspicious. It means that even Feng Ho might not be his match. Of course, in addition to Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and the little lunatic have also obtained great fortunes in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. When they come out of seclusion, they will give you a big shock. The blood ancestor smiled secretly. The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit were stunned. Even Feng Ho might not be Qin Feiyang's match? Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? However, the blood ancestor wasn't the kind of person who liked to joke. He couldn't help but look forward to it. Facing Feng Ho's gaze, Qin Feiyang wasn't afraid at all. He said indifferently, I'm just giving you a kind advice. If you want to listen, then listen. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. Anyway, just don't regret it when the time comes. Then I thank you for your kind intentions first. Feng Ho snorted coldly. Looking at Princess Huofeng and Daifuku who walked in front of her, she could clearly feel an aura of anger. Long Chen. Compared to Feng Ho, the Dragon King's attitude toward Long Chen was much better. Because even the Dragon King didn't dare to offend Long Chen. I've made the Dragon King worry. Long Chen smiled slightly. It's good that you're back. The Dragon King smiled. Long Chen asked, where are my mother and sister? They're all fine. The Dragon King nodded. Hearing this, Long Chen's heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally relieved. Qi Xiaoyun and Whitebeard also walked to the side of the Qilin Lord, and asked about his well-being with concern. Brother Qin, so you're back. I thought that I would never see you in the Nether King's hell in my life. How have you been all these years? By the way, why don't I see the madman and the Wolf King? At this moment, in the mountains below, a group of fierce beasts rushed up. Their blood-red eyes were full of kindness. Looking at this scene, Princess Huofeng and the others revealed a trace of disbelief in their eyes. These fierce beasts at first glance were ferocious by nature, but they didn't expect to have such a good relationship with Qin Feiyang, the madman and the white-eyed wolf. They were like old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. Qin Feiyang looked at those fierce beasts. To be honest, he didn't have any impression of these fierce beasts. He had never even seen them before, but the other party always remembered them. We're all fine. Thank you for your concern. What about you? These years, did anything major happen in the Nether King's hell? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. We won't talk about it. Since Lord Fire Python guarded the Nether King's hell, it's much more peaceful than before. But, when the group of fierce beasts said this, they couldn't help but look at Dragon King and the others. At the same time, they seemed to be a little angry and disgusted. Don't worry. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt you. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. They're still as arrogant as ever. Dragon King and the others couldn't help but snort coldly in their hearts. And Brother Qin is righteous. However, they have already injured Lord Fire Python. A fierce beast said angrily. What? Injured fire python? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows immediately. This happened when they just came to the Nether King's hell. At that time, Lord Fire Python questioned them, asking where they came from and why they came to the Nether King's hell. However, they relied on their strength and spoke rudely to Lord Fire Python. Lord Fire Python was angry and wanted to use rule force to suppress them, but in the end, they actually interfered with rule force and injured Lord Fire Python. A group of fierce beasts roared angrily. Chapter 38:53. When Qin Feiyang heard that, he immediately looked at Dragon King and the other two. His eyes were filled with intense coldness. Dragon King and the other two raised their eyebrows. Although the fire python was the guardian of this place, in their eyes it was just an ant-like existence. But they never expected that the fire python was related to Qin Feiyang. And looking at the current situation, their relationship was not ordinary. These beasts really deserved to die. They were usually obedient in front of them, but when they saw Qin Feiyang return, they began to complain. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "This matter is indeed their fault, but I have already reprimanded them, and the fire python is not seriously injured." Qin Feiyang looked at the Feather Emperor and asked, "So this matter is true?" The Feather Emperor was slightly stunned, as if he was surprised that Qin Feiyang suddenly interrupted him. Then, when he saw Qin Feiyang's gloomy face, he could not help but sigh in his heart. It seemed that this matter could not be resolved peacefully. Yes. He did not explain further, nor did he try to persuade him. He nodded. Originally, out of consideration for the overall situation, he did not want to make a big deal out of this matter, because it would affect the unity of the various races. But looking at Qin Feiyang's current expression, it was as if he had touched his reverse scale. And as a close relative, whether right or wrong, he should stand on Qin Feiyang's side. Moreover, this matter was the fault of Dragon King and the other two. So if he continued to persuade and obstruct, he was afraid that Qin Feiyang would be dissatisfied. He might even have a problem with him. It was not worth it to destroy this familial relationship for Dragon King and the other two. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang. Seeing that the Feather Emperor nodded, he looked at Dragon King and the other two again and asked, "I would like to ask, are you here for sightseeing?" The disgust in his heart towards the three of them became even stronger. Dragon King and the other two shook their heads. What was Qin Feiyang going to say? Qin Feiyang asked again, "Then are you here on behalf of Ice Dragon and Small Beast for a routine inspection?" The three shook their heads again. "What are you trying to say?" Dragon King raised his eyebrows, his tone extremely impatient. "You're getting impatient?" Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed. He glanced at the three of them and said, "What I want to say is, you came to other people's territory to take refuge. What right do you have to show off and abuse your power in front of them?" The three frowned. "What is it?" "Not convinced. To be honest, I really admire your thick skin. The fire python took you in so that you could have a place to stay in the Infernal King's hell. But what about you? How did you repay it?" Not only did he not show the slightest bit of gratitude, he even spoke rudely to it and attacked it. Is this how the three great giants of the Sky Cloud realm conduct themselves? Qin Feiyang was furious. He had always been grateful and respectful towards the fire python, because in the past the fire python had helped him too much. And every time it helped him, it took the risk of being punished by the ice dragon and the small beast. He still remembered that when he opened the gate of rebirth and was in a state of near death in the Great Qin Empire, it was the fire python who came to save his life with the elixir. Although this elixir was won from the ice dragon at the cost of the inner demons and his cousin's life, but if the fire python did not send it in time, he would still be dead. So, whether it was for public or private reasons, he would not allow anyone to hurt the fire python. To this, Dragon King and the other two were silent. Although their expressions could not be seen, they could clearly feel a trace of disdain. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, looked at the Dragon King and the other two, and continued, "I know that there are many people here who want to persuade me to look at the big picture. I, Qin Feiyang, am not an unreasonable person. I can let this matter go. However, you must apologize to the fire python in person and obtain his forgiveness." There was no room for negotiation in his words. "Apologize to it?" Dragon King laughed angrily, and could no longer hold back the anger in his heart. He shouted, "Why? What is it? What qualifications does it have to make us apologize? Don't forget that it is because we fought with the Divine Kingdom in the Sky Cloud realm that they can live a carefree life here." "That's right. Back then, when the experts of the Divine Kingdom fought their way to the Hell of Hades, it was the Blood Demon King who brought the Blood Demon clan here and fought a bloody battle with the experts of the Divine Kingdom to protect this continent. Otherwise, not to mention the Hell of Hades, even your hometown, the Great Qin Empire, and even the ancient realm, I'm afraid would no longer exist. So the truly great people are us, and the ones who should be grateful are us. Do you understand?" Feng Ho and the Kirin Master were also extremely dissatisfied. He actually wanted them to apologize to an ant from the lower realm? Was this even possible? The greatness of the Blood Demon King, I don't think otherwise. Your efforts and contributions can't be erased. But, are your actions truly worthy of the word great? If it wasn't for your selfishness, would the human emperor have fallen? Would the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor have left their homes? Would the Princess of the Divine Kingdom have been sealed for so many years? I believe that the Princess of the Divine Kingdom also played a part in driving away the Divine Kingdom. She is the Princess of the Divine Kingdom, the daughter of the King of the Divine Kingdom. To our world, she is an outsider. But for such an outsider, for the sake of the Sky Cloud realm and the people of the world, she didn't hesitate to fall out with her family and go against her own people. Isn't she great? Shouldn't you be grateful to her? But in the end, you mercilessly sealed her. If it wasn't for Big Brother taking care of the land of buried gods all these years, I'm afraid not only her, but also the respected divine beasts like the Azure Dragon would have died in your hands. And my clansmen of the Qin clan. If it weren't for you three, would we have been stranded in a foreign land? So the truly great people are the Blood Demon King, the Human Emperor, the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, the Princess of the Divine Kingdom, the Azure Dragon, and the Sea Lion Emperor. Not you. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. He was trying his best to endure. Don't try to challenge his bottom line. Hearing these words, the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, and the others looked at each other. The resentment and anger that had been suppressed in their hearts couldn't help but rise. They didn't want to think about these past events. Because every time they thought about it, they were angrier than Qin Feiyang. Even today, after many years when they faced the Dragon King and the others again, they didn't take the initiative to mention it. They silently endured it. But now, not only did the Dragon King and the others not reflect on themselves, but they also claimed to be great? Where did they get the courage? Looking at the Dragon King and the others again, they seemed to have been hit where it hurt, making them very embarrassed. They lowered their heads in silence. After a long time, the Dragon King said, "No matter what you say, we have a clear conscience. If you don't have any selfish motives, you can indeed say that you have a clear conscience. But now touch your conscience and ask yourselves, are you really worthy of the words clear conscience?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you." Feng Ho snorted coldly, looked at Princess Huofeng, and said, "Wu suppress your cultivation to the Nine Heavens realm. Let's go." Princess Huofeng looked a little hesitant, but in the end she nodded. Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth and said jokingly, "Lord Feng Ho, are you too lazy to talk nonsense with me? Or are you guilty and don't dare to face us again? Don't go too far." Feng Ho immediately looked at Qin Feiyang, killing intent flashing in her eyes. "You are the ones who are going too far. If you don't apologize to the fire python today, don't even think about leaving." Qin Feiyang stared at the three of them, his eyes as sharp as blades. "As expected of a scholar who has been away for 3 days, I have to look at you with new eyes. Good, very good. Then let's see if you have the ability to stop us." Feng Ho sneered, turned around, and left with Princess Huofeng. The Dragon King and the Qilin Master did not stay, turning around and leaving with Long Chun, Qi Xiaoyan, and the others. But the Fire Qilin Tan Wu, and the Cerberus did not move. Looking at the Qilin master's back, they could not help but frown. Obviously, the Qilin master's attitude made them a little uncomfortable. It seems that they really want to challenge my bottom line. Looking at the backs of the three people, a trace of a smile gradually crept onto Qin Feiyang's face. However, the appearance of this smile not only did not alleviate the atmosphere of the scene, it instead became even more serious. Whoosh! The next moment, three figures appeared. It was Li Zhongxing, Qiao Shui, and the old poison. When the Feather Emperor and the little rabbit saw the three, their pupils shrunk. They had never seen these three before? Could they be the undead of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury? But they did not seem to sense any undead aura from them either. But one thing was for sure. The three of them were very strong. Qin Feiyang looked at the three and said with a smile, "You should be familiar with the Black Tortoise world now, right?" Yes. The three nodded. They could only use one word to describe the Black Tortoise world: absolute. Qin Feiyang looked at the Dragon King's group and said with a smile, "Then help me stop them." Li Zhongxing's group raised their heads and saw Princess Huafeng, Long Chen, Qi Xiaoyan, and the Whitebeard. They were all obediently following beside the three. Li Zhongxing chuckled and said, "They seem to be very strong. Why don't you give it a try?" Qin Feiyang smiled. Haha. Li Zhongxing laughed loudly as he swept up Qiao Shui and the old poison. He activated Momentary Time, and instantly appeared in front of the Dragon King's group. The three raised their brows. Princess Huafeng, Qi Xiaoyan, and the Whitebeard couldn't help but feel nervous. As for Long Chen, he looked at Li Zhongxing's group before looking at the Dragon King's group. His expression was rather calm. Because to him, regardless of whether it was the Dragon King or Qin Feiyang, he did not have much feelings for them. The old poison looked at the three and said with a smile, "I'm new here. Please give me some pointers." New here? The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit exchanged glances. Were they really the undead of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury? The little rabbit looked at the Blood Ancestor and asked doubtfully, "Old devil, what's going on?" Although we have only been in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury for a little over 100 years, it is much more exciting than the last time we entered. I will explain it to you later. For now, let's watch the show. The Blood Ancestor chuckled as he looked at the Dragon King's group with a playful smile. If you still think that Qin Feiyang is the same kid from back then, you will suffer greatly. Chapter 3854. What do you mean? Dragon King and the other two turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. My three friends have just arrived in the Sky Cloud realm, and want to exchange pointers with you. Can't you give them this little face? Just arrived in the Sky Cloud realm? The three of them frowned. They also realized that the identity of Li Zhongxing and the other two didn't seem simple. With just them? Dragon King sneered. Looking down on us? Hearing this, the old poison's eyebrows suddenly creased with a trace of gloominess. Boom. The poison gas suppressed in his body suddenly erupted. Waves of terrifying poisonous gas surged towards the three of them like a tide. Retreat. Daifuku's expression changed. He hurriedly pulled Princess Huafeng and retreated like lightning. He had been following Qin Feiyang and the others in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, so he had seen the old poison's strength with his own eyes. Especially the poison in the old poison's body, which was enough to threaten a perfect sovereign divine weapon. However, although Princess Huafeng, Long Chen, Qi Xiaoyan, and the white-bearded old man hadn't seen the old poison's means with their own eyes, they had already realized the horror of the old poison when they saw the poison gas gushing out of his body. So, Long Chen and Qi Xiaoyan didn't hesitate and quickly retreated far away. Fortunately, they retreated in time. As soon as the poison gas appeared, the vegetation in the mountains below instantly withered and decayed. Even the bodies of the beasts were decaying at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang hurriedly looked at the old poison and reminded him, "Don't hurt the creatures here." Ha! The old poison was taken aback. Before, he was in the Black Tortoise realm, so he didn't know that the beasts of hell were Qin Feiyang's friends. When he came back to his senses, he quickly waved his hand and the poison gas quickly gathered. He shouted, quickly retreat a little. How would the surrounding beasts dare to watch? They hurriedly fled in all directions. Li Zhongxing also looked at the old poison with vigilance. It's best if you don't release the poison gas, so as to avoid accidentally injuring us. Ha! The old poison laughed dryly. The poison gas quickly returned to his body. Then he took a step forward and sent a palm strike towards the Dragon King. You're courting death. Murderous intent flashed in Dragon King's eyes as he punched out furiously. The fist and the palm collided. A terrifying wave of energy suddenly surged out. The Feather Emperor and the little rabbit looked at each other. The power of laws rolled out and condensed into a giant barrier. It enveloped an area of millions of miles and immediately formed an independent battlefield. Inside the enchantment, Dragon King and the old poison each took a step back. Their strengths were actually equally matched. This made the Dragon King very surprised, but a trace of disdain instantly crept up on his face, and a surge of law power emerged. However, just as he was about to attack again, his expression suddenly changed. He discovered that his arm was actually rotting and flowing with pitch-black blood. Furthermore, he could clearly sense that an astonishing poison was surging into his body through his arm. Wherever this poison passed, the flesh and blood immediately began to rot. The old poison stared at the Dragon King and laughed. If you think that this seat no longer needs to be afraid of the threat of the poison gas, just because this seat has restrained the poison gas, then you are gravely mistaken. He could freely retract and release the poison gas. Moreover, although he had restrained the poisonous gas, at this moment, every inch of his skin, every strand of his hair, and every drop of his blood contained deadly poison. As long as one touched his body, they would be entangled by the poison. Highly toxic, the Dragon King muttered. As if thinking of something, he exclaimed, "Could it be that you are the Thousand Poisons Demon King?" Thousand Poisons Demon King? The old poison was slightly taken aback and shook his head. I don't dare to compare with the Thousand Poisons Demon King, but I believe that sooner or later, I will surpass her. If you are not the Thousand Poisons Demon King, then why are you so arrogant? The Dragon King smiled contemptuously. A surge of law power emerged and rushed towards the poison in his body. However, the poison was disintegrated in an instant. Boom. The next moment, as he waved his hand, a huge eye appeared in the sky, exuding a destructive aura. The ultimate profound of the law of destruction, the heavenly eye of destruction. There is only one outcome for those who oppose me, and that is death. The Dragon King said coldly. The heavenly eye of destruction spewed out rays of light of destruction, crazily attacking the old poison. Die. Who are you looking down on? The old poison sneered. Accompanied by the emergence of a black force, a black hole immediately appeared in the sky. This black hole was incomparably huge, deep and dark. In the depths of the black hole, there was a blood-red light. From afar, it looked like the bloody mouth of a giant beast. The mountains, rivers, earth, and the void immediately began to collapse crazily, shattering and rushing towards the black hole. That scene seemed to be devouring the world. The law of devour, the ultimate profound. Looking at this scene, not only the Dragon King, Feng Ho, the Qilin Master, even the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were shocked. This person had actually grasped the ultimate profundity of a supreme law. No wonder Qin Feiyang asked him to take action. Wait a minute. Since the old poison had mastered the ultimate profound of the law of devour, then the other man and woman, the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit, could not help but look at Li Zhongxing and Xiao Shui, their eyes full of shock. You're shocked already? The old poison's face was full of disdain. With a wave of his hand, a storm swept out from the black hole, emitting an unparalleled aura, and blasted towards the rays of light of destruction. Boom. The world buzzed. This place instantly turned into a state of chaos. The barrier that the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit set up together was trembling violently. In the end, the two ultimate profound were shattered at the same time. The Dragon King and the old poison both vomited a mouthful of blood. However, the old poison's eyes were even more ferocious, like a demon king. This was his true nature. Don't worry, take your time. Following the old poison monster's sinister laughter, another black power of law surged out from his body. The world instantly plunged into deep darkness. However, it was not the law of devour, but the law of darkness. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out from his body. A sun appeared in the sky, but this sun presented a strange black color, like the scene of a heavenly dog devouring the sun. What? The ultimate profound of the law of darkness. The Feather Emperor and Little Prince were shocked. They did not expect that this person not only grasped the ultimate profound of the law of devour, but also the ultimate profound of the law of darkness. Two ultimate profound. This was already the pinnacle existence in the Sky Cloud realm. The Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord also had a look of disbelief. An expert like that would be able to dominate a region no matter where he went. However, why would he follow Qin Feiyang? Boom. The old poison smiled sinisterly, and the ultimate profound of the law of devour was activated once again. The deep black hole was like a space-time wormhole, exuding the power of destruction, making people shudder. Even the Dragon King will have to kneel before me. The old poison laughed wildly. The two ultimate profound moved with a loud rumble, attacking the Dragon King at the same time. Too arrogant. Open your eyes and see what true strength is. The Dragon King was furious. Kneel? In front of him. The old poison actually had the courage to say such arrogant words. He was simply courting death. At the same time that the ultimate profound of the law of destruction was activated, a force of death roared out, and the next moment, the 18 layers of hell appeared. Two ultimate profound of the two ultimate laws. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank. Sure enough, he is much stronger than before. The blood ancestor whispered. How strong was he back then? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The blood ancestor said. Back then he only grasped the ultimate profound of the law of destruction. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said indifferently, it seems that compared to the primal chaos divine king and the demon kings, they are still a lot worse. Of course. There is almost no inheritance of the ultimate profound in the Sky Cloud realm. So naturally, it can't be compared to the Sky Bell divine treasure. The blood ancestor said. Qin Feiyang looked at the Dragon King again. Don't underestimate the old poison just because he grasped the ultimate profound of the two ultimate laws. The old poison's strength was far more than that. Hey, sure enough. The old poison grinned, and the ordinary-looking walking stick in his hand suddenly erupted with a monstrous power. It then left his hand, tore through the chaos, and instantly attacked. Boom. It was accompanied by a loud noise that shook the sky. The walking stick, the two ultimate profound of the law of darkness and the law of devour, collided with the Dragon King's two ultimate laws at almost the same time. What? The Dragon King looked at the walking stick in horror. It was actually a sovereign weapon? Why was this? An expert who possessed a sovereign divine weapon and two ultimates was actually following Qin Feiyang? What kind of charm did this little beast have? Why were so many people willing to work for him? Boom. Just as the Dragon King was distracted, the walking stick and the two ultimate profound crushed the ultimate profound of the law of death and the law of destruction. However, the old poison's ultimate profound of the law of devour was also destroyed. The walking stick was also blasted away. However, the ultimate profound of the law of darkness was still there, and with a shocking divine power, it instantly blasted toward the Dragon King. A destructive shockwave erupted, drowning the Dragon King, and blood instantly dyed the sky red. Dragon King, Feng Ho and the Qilin Lord's expressions changed, and they immediately prepared to go forward to help. But at the same time, Li Zhongxing and Xiao Shui took a step forward and blocked the two of them. Feng Ho and the Qilin Lord stared at Li Zhongxing and Xiao Shui with a heavy expression. If the old poison was so strong, then the two of them were definitely not simple. Don't get the wrong target. We are your opponents. Xiao Shui's expression was cold, and her white dress was spotless. Her snow-like hair fluttered behind her, and she looked like an empress, incomparably domineering. As expected of my goddess. Looking at Xiao Shui's appearance, Li Zhongxing's face was full of admiration. I'm serious. Xiao Shui glared at him. Good. Li Zhongxing nodded repeatedly and looked at Feng Ho and the Qilin Lord. He grinned and said, It's really an honor to be able to fight with the strongest people in the Sky Cloud realm. As his voice fell, the law of time and the law of slaughter emerged. At the same time, the Nine Flames divine staff also appeared, and the sovereign's divine power enveloped all directions. What? Feng Ho's expression changed. Boom. Xiao Shui also opened the law of destruction, and the law of ice. The ice snow divine sword also appeared. The Qilin Lord's expression also became sluggish. These three people actually all mastered two ultimate profound, and they all have sovereign's weapons. Chapter 38:55. At this moment, Princess Huofeng, Longchen Qi Xiaoyan, the white-bearded old man, the masked Azura, and the Sea Lion Emperor finally knew how powerful the three were. Although they had already seen Li Zhongxing and the other two at the exit of the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasury, and knew that those who were valued by Qin Feiyang and kept by his side were definitely not ordinary people, they basically knew nothing about the specific situation of the three of them. After all, they had not been in the primal chaos royal city all these years. Only Daifuku, Yin Xiang, Azure Dragon, and Qin Feiyang knew the strength of the three. So at this moment, looking at the terrifying strength displayed by Li Zhongxing and the other two, they were quite shocked. It was no exaggeration to say that, putting aside the sovereign divine weapon, in terms of strength, except for the Dragon King and the Blood Ancestor, no one was their match. Even the mad scientist, the masked Azura, and Princess Huofeng, after fusing with the profound meanings left by Azure Dragon, Blood Ancestor, and Daifuku, were only on par with the three. Of course, Li Feng and Yin Xiang could not be ignored. After all, Li Feng had already mastered two profound meanings, the law of slaughter and the law of space-time. As for Yin Xiang, although he only mastered the law of space-time, if he really went all out, he could still fight with the Dragon King and the others. Amazing! Feather Emperor took a deep breath. Even he could not help but admire Qin Feiyang for being able to subdue these three powerful existences. The appearance of Li Zhongxing and the other two was undoubtedly great news for the current situation of the Sky Cloud realm, because with the strength of the three, they could compete with the experts of the Divine Kingdom. Due to the silence of Feng Ho and the other two, the scene fell into dead silence again. Swish! At this moment, a fiery red beast shadow appeared. It was the fire python. Brother Qin. The fire python was extremely excited. Brother Fire. Qin Feiyang was also pleasantly surprised. He quickly ran to the front of the fire python. The man and the beast looked at each other. Their eyes could not help but moisten. The fire python asked, "How have you been these years?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and asked with a smile, "What about you?" The fire python said, "I'm pretty good too. Look at my strength. I've become much stronger." Qin Feiyang looked at the fire python's cultivation. It was at the perfect imperishable realm, just one step away from the half-step sovereign realm. He was not surprised by the change in the fire python's cultivation. This was because there was a time array on the second level of the temple. Furthermore, the temple also had nomological legacies. Although it was not the inheritance of an ultimate profound, it was already considered a great fortune for the fire python. However, from the looks of it, you've become even stronger. It seems that even with the time array, I won't be able to catch up to you. Fire Python looked at Qin Feiyang for a while, then shook his head and sighed. There's no rush. Once I'm done here, I'll ask the Patriarch to set up a time formation that lasts for 1 day and 1,000 years. Qin Feiyang smiled. Not 1,000 years in a day, but 5,000 years in a day, the Blood Ancestor reminded him. Ah. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the Blood Ancestor. I've already grasped the ultimate profound of the law of time. How can it still be 1,000 years in a day? The Blood Ancestor rolled his eyes. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. After grasping the ultimate profound of the law of time, the Blood Ancestor could already set up a time formation that lasted for 5,000 years in a day. Wait, didn't Li Zhongxing also grasp the law of time? Besides, he had also comprehended the ultimate profound. He could totally find him. Qin Feiyang slapped his head angrily. He had actually neglected this guy. What are you doing? The fire python looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Nothing. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and chuckled. I'll ask the patriarch to set up a time formation that lasts for 5,000 years in a day. I guarantee that your cultivation will improve by leaps and bounds. Really? The fire python was surprised. Would I lie to you? Qin Feiyang smiled. Thank you, brother. The fire python bared its teeth. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or the fire python, they were really happy to see an old friend. But suddenly, the fire python seemed to have thought of something. A cold light surged in its eyes as it asked, Brother Qin, where's that guy? That guy? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. Looking at the fire python's expression, he suddenly smiled and nodded. I've already killed him. Really? The fire python asked. Qin Feiyang nodded, pointed at Princess Huafeng and Long Chun and said, If you don't believe me, you can ask them. They all saw it with their own eyes. What? The two of them were suspicious. Fire dragon, Qin Feiyang said. Fire dragon? Long Chun was stunned. Looking at the fire python, he looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, You want to kill the fire dragon because of it? Not exactly. The fire dragon and I have a grudge to begin with. Of course. Killing the fire dragon has always been Brother Fire's wish. Qin Feiyang looked up at the fire python and laughed. Brother Fire, your revenge has been avenged. You can rest assured from now on. That's right. I can rest assured. The fire python nodded. The hatred that had been suppressed in its heart for many years had finally dissipated. Qin Feiyang patted the fire python's huge tail and comforted it with a smile. Brother Fire, we'll catch up later. Right now, I'll help you get justice. After saying that, he looked at the Dragon King and the other two again. Help me get justice. The fire python was stunned. It looked at the Dragon King and the other two, then looked at Li Zhongxing and the other two, then turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked in a daze. Are you helping me vent my anger? Yes. If they dare to bully you, isn't that the same as bullying me? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. The fire python was touched and shook its head. Brother Qin, seeing that they are in a sorry state now, let's just forget about it. In fact, they didn't hit very hard at that time. Lord Guardian, you're still pleading for them? At that time, your body was almost shattered. The group of beasts behind immediately roared when they heard this. You guys told Brother Qin? The fire python looked at those beasts. Yes. We just can't stand their tyrannical behavior here. Those beasts stared at the Dragon King and the other two in disgust. The fire python smiled bitterly. Why were the beasts so gossipy? It looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Forget it. Brother Fire, you still don't understand? Some people just bully the weak and fear the strong. You don't have to worry about this. I will entertain them well. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and looked at Li Zhongxing and the other two saying, Go ahead. I will take responsibility for whether you kill or cripple them. Okay. Qiao Shui nodded. Li Zhongxing and the old poison chuckled. Boom. The walking stick, the ice snow divine sword, and the 9 flames divine staff awakened. At the same time, the three of them also activated their own ultimate meaning. Qin Feiyang also finally saw the true face of the ultimate meaning of the time law. The power of time surged around Li Zhongxing's body, and a fierce aura erupted. Accompanied by a loud clang, a 3-feet-long sword appeared. This sword was actually translucent, and didn't have any brilliant divine light. It looked extremely simple, and if one didn't look carefully, they would ignore its existence. But when Li Zhongxing grabbed the divine sword, a monstrous sharpness suddenly erupted, as if it could annihilate the stars and cut through time and space. Sure enough, the time law wasn't all auxiliary. It also had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Feng Ho said angrily. Qin Feiyang, are you really going to force us? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. I'm not forcing you. As long as you apologize, I will immediately make them stop. Impossible. Feng Ho shook her head decisively and said. Also, don't let your minions show off. If you have the ability, come and fight us yourself. Me? Fight you personally? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Daifuku's face also changed drastically. Let Qin Feiyang personally fight? What was Feng Ho trying to do? Was she looking for death? One had to know. Qin Feiyang had not only integrated the ultimate meaning of the karma law, but he had also comprehended the ultimate meaning of the life and death law. He had seen the ultimate meaning of the life and death law with his own eyes. It was an existence that could compete with the ultimate meaning of the strongest law. Not to mention the dozens of sovereign divine weapons, just these two laws, coupled with Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations, were enough to crush them. She actually wanted him to fight personally? Although Daifuku had always respected Feng Ho, he couldn't help but scold her for being stupid. Daifuku, what's the matter with you? Princess Huofeng noticed Daifuku's abnormality and couldn't help but look at Daifuku suspiciously. Daifuku secretly sighed. Your Highness, you'd better warn Feng Ho not to force Qin Feiyang to fight personally. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. It could be said that the current Qin Feiyang, even without the help of the sovereign divine weapons, was already an invincible existence in the sky cloud realm. I also want to say it, but do you think Feng Ho will listen to me? Princess Huofeng shook her head. Sigh. Daifuku sighed. Haha. A loud laugh suddenly sounded. Everyone looked at Li Feng. Li Feng looked at Feng Ho and the other two and said disdainfully, Are you qualified to make Qin Dage personally fight? Presumptuous. The three of them were unable to restrain their anger. Now, even such a lowly junior dared to openly provoke them? It's not that I look down on you, but you don't even have the qualifications to make Qin Dage personally fight. I can kill you all. Li Feng smiled sinisterly. Courting death. The three of them couldn't bear it anymore and directly charged at Li Feng. Do you think we don't exist? Xiao Shui coldly snorted, waved her hand, and two ultimates immediately attacked the three of them. If you want to fight with Boss Qin, defeat us first. Li Zhongxing and the old poison also smiled disdainfully. Four ultimates, with monstrous power, blasted towards the three of them. At the same time, there were also three sovereign divine weapons, the crutch, the nine flames divine staff, and the ice snow divine sword. Get lost. Dragon King and the other two roared. The power of laws surged, and one ultimates after another appeared out of nowhere. Feng Ho and the Qilin Lord also mastered two ultimates of the strongest laws. Feng Ho mastered the space-time law and the destruction law. The Qilin Lord mastered the death law and the time law. The six ultimates emitted a destructive aura. The barrier set up by Feather Emperor, and the little rabbit couldn't withstand it. Seeing that the barrier was about to shatter, a divine aura suddenly emerged from Long Chen's body. It was the Heavenly God Sword. The Heavenly God Sword was a mid-level dominator divine weapon, so it was naturally easy for it to seal off the battle here. Although the Heavenly God Sword didn't appear and was still hidden in Long Chen's body, this terrifying divine aura still shocked Feather Emperor and the little rabbit. They looked at Long Chen, their eyes filled with shock. Chapter 3856. At the same time, Feng Ho, Dragon King, and Qilin Lord were also shocked. In the past, Long Chen had never taken out the Heavenly God Sword because he was a relatively low-key person. Even Dragon King didn't know about the existence of the Heavenly God Sword. This aura was obviously stronger than an ordinary sovereign divine weapon. There was such a divine weapon in the world? However, thinking of Long Chen's identity, everyone was relieved. With such a terrifying father, how could he not have some powerful trump cards? At this time, they didn't have time to think about these problems. Li Zhongxing's trio's sovereign divine weapon and ultimate profound had already brought the power to destroy the world. It was no exaggeration. Even if Dragon King's trio didn't go all out, they would still be defeated. Boom. Cold light surged in the trio's eyes. As the lords of the three forbidden lands, how could they allow others to offend their dignity? The six ultimate profound furiously attacked. Accompanied by a loud noise, a violent aura suddenly emerged in the enchantment, surging like rivers and seas. The six ultimate profound were very strong. In the sky cloud realm and hell, they could be called invincible. However, Li Zhongxing's trio's methods weren't weak either. The 3 sovereign divine weapons and the 3 ultimate profound were almost on par with the Dragon King's trio. This was because each of the 3 sovereign weapons could fight against an ultimate intent. Moreover, in addition to the 3 sovereign divine weapons and the 3 ultimate profound, they also activated the 3 ultimate profound of ordinary laws. Therefore, the overall strength of Li Zhongxing's trio was above the Dragon King's trio. Boom! With a sudden collision, the ultimate profound of the various ultimate laws were shattered, and the 3 sovereign divine weapons were also sent flying. However, Li Zhongxing's trio's ultimate profound of ordinary laws were still there. They tore through the chaotic zone and madly attacked the Dragon King's trio. No more moves. Li Feng looked at the Dragon King's trio and sneered. Don't underestimate them. This isn't their full strength. Feather Emperor shook his head. What? This isn't their full strength? Li Feng was shocked. Yes. Dragon King and the other 2 have not only grasped 2 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws of nature, they have also grasped the ultimate profundities of an ordinary law of nature. Feather Emperor nodded. Doesn't that mean that they've all grasped the 3 ultimate profundities? Li Feng was stunned. Was this the strength of the Dragon King trio? Powerful indeed. As expected, just as Li Zhongxing and the other 2's ordinary ultimate profundities were about to reach the Dragon King's group, a shocking aura suddenly erupted from the Dragon King's group. Following closely, 2 fire laws rushed out from Feng Ho and the Qilin's main body. The law of light also rushed out of Dragon King's body. The power of these 3 laws rapidly evolved into ultimate profound meanings. The ultimate profound meaning of the fire laws was an endless sea of fire that submerged the skies. The enchantment seemed to have turned into a giant furnace, with heat waves billowing out. In the center of the sea of fire stood 2 flame giants that were tens of thousands of feet tall. They were like 2 gigantic spiritual gods, exuding a divine might that could destroy the heavens and earth. The ultimate profundity of the laws of light was a huge full moon. There seemed to be a kingdom within it, with countless auspicious beasts flying about and countless angels dancing about. It was suffused with a holy aura. Inferno Divine Spirit, Kingdom of Light. The Blood Ancestor whispered. He didn't expect the Dragon King trio to be so powerful. Originally, after grasping the ultimate profundities of the law of slaughter, the law of death, and the law of time, he felt that defeating these 3 should be possible. But now it seemed that it wasn't enough. At the same time, Li Zhongxing and the other 2 were also extremely surprised. The 3 lords of the Sky Cloud Realm's forbidden zones were indeed extraordinary. If it weren't for the cane, the Frost Divine Sword, and the 9 Flames Divine Staff, they really wouldn't be a match for these 3. Boom! Accompanied by a loud explosion, the 6 ultimate profundities of ordinary laws collided with a loud bang, and it was another scene of mutual destruction. Whether it was Li Zhongxing and the other 2, or the Dragon King trio, they all spat out a mouthful of blood. You dare to clamor with this little strength? Don't forget, we haven't used the sovereign weapons yet. But to deal with you, we don't need to use them. The Dragon King trio was full of arrogance. Accompanied by the roar of a dragon, phoenix, and Qilin, 1,000 Zhonglong fire phoenix, 100 Zhonglong Qilin, and a 10,000 Zhonglong divine dragon instantly appeared. These were the true forms of the Dragon King trio: Fire Phoenix, Fire Qilin, and Sacred Dragon. The 3 lords of the Forbidden Zones had all returned to their true forms. It was clear that they already had the intention to kill Li Zhongxing and the other 2. Similarly, it also represented their acknowledgement of Li Zhongxing and the other 2, because for giants like them, under normal circumstances, it was impossible for them to reveal their true forms, unless they were already enraged, unless the opponent's strength was on par with theirs. Dragons' might filled the sky. Phoenix's might shook the world. Qilin's might shook the world. Suffer our wrath. The 3 lords of the Forbidden Zones roared. 6 ultimate laws, 3 ultimate laws, appeared again, and a destructive aura flooded all directions. Afraid of you? Kill. Li Zhongxing and the other 2 were not to be outdone. After all, they were all super strong and had the help of the sovereign weapons. How could they be afraid? Moreover, They had gone through countless life and death crises in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure to reach this step today. How could they be afraid just because the Dragon King trio had returned to their true forms? Boom. Both sides collided again, and both sides went all out without holding back. If it weren't for the heavenly god sword sealing the aura, half of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure would have been affected. This was the destructive power of super strong experts. Any one of them could destroy a continent. Poof. Li Zhongxing and the other two flew out, blood gushing out, and bloody wounds appeared on their bodies. It was a shocking sight. The walking stick, the ice snow divine sword, and the 9 flames divine staff also had cracks on their bodies. Looking at the Dragon King again, although he was dripping blood all over, his situation seemed to be much better than Li Zhongxing and the other two, because at this moment, there was a divine domain around them. This was the super forbidden technique of the 3 races, the Divine Dragon Domain, the Divine Phoenix Domain, and the Qilin Divine Domain. Not only did they have powerful destructive power, they also had astonishing defensive power. Go to hell. The 3 of them smiled coldly. The killing moves of the 3 super forbidden techniques appeared. A huge fire Qilin, a terrifying divine dragon, and an ice phoenix and a fire phoenix soared into the sky at the same time, carrying an astonishing destructive aura as they charged towards Li Zhongxing and the other two. You want to kill them? You still have to get my permission. The blood ancestor snorted coldly. However, Li Feng was a step ahead and laughed. Master, how can I trouble you to personally take action for such a small matter? Isn't this a waste of talent? Ugh. The blood ancestor was stunned and couldn't help but laugh and scold. Little bastard, stealing the limelight. But it didn't matter. Li Feng was his disciple. His disciple was in the limelight, and his face was also shining. And the Dragon King and the other two looked at Li Feng and raised their brows. Li Feng directly stepped into the enchantment and stood in front of Li Zhongxing and the other two. Looking at the Dragon King, the killing intent in his eyes was undisguised, and he said, "You dragons are really a disgusting race." As his voice fell, the ultimate meaning of the space-time laws appeared, crushing the 3 super forbidden techniques and directly drowning the Dragon King and the other two. What? The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit exclaimed. Long Chun, Sea Lion Emperor, and the others were also dumbfounded. They were not familiar with Li Feng. Moreover, not long ago, when Li Feng and Yun Xiang fought the red-haired old man in the land of buried gods, they were also on Sky Cloud Island, and did not see it with their own eyes. Therefore, they were not too clear about Li Feng's strength. And in their eyes, Li Feng was just a junior, even younger than Qin Feiyang and the others, so they naturally thought that Li Feng would not be too strong. But they never thought that he would have such a method now. The Feather Emperor looked at the blood ancestor and shook his head. It seems that you guys have indeed obtained a heaven-defying fortune in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure this time. If Qin Feiyang and Madman had become so strong, he would not be surprised. But Li Feng had actually become so powerful, which was a bit unbelievable. The blood ancestor smiled without saying a word, his face full of pride. Looking at the battlefield again, Dragon King and the other two were caught off guard by the ultimate meaning of the space-time laws. The Divine Dragon Domain, Divine Phoenix Domain, and Qilin Divine Domain were all shattered. The terrifying aura instantly drowned them. That huge body was instantly mangled, and blood dyed the surroundings red. Boom. However, after all, they were the lords of the 3 forbidden zones, and had extraordinary means and battle awareness. Soon, they reacted, and the power of the various laws surged out, shattering the space-time laws. Then they looked at Li Feng opposite them, their eyes filled with disbelief. Such a minor character had actually grasped the ultimate profundity of an ultimate law. Was this a dream? Surprised. Humph. Let me tell you, this is no longer your world. Li Feng snorted from his nose, and the space-time laws reappeared. At the same time, the massacre laws roared out. Within the enchantment, blood waves instantly surged, turning into a sea of murderous intent. Clang. One by one, 3-foot blood swords appeared. In the end, a total of 99 blood swords surrounded Li Feng, constantly dripping blood. It was like a group of demons from the abyss of hell, but also seemed to have absorbed the blood of countless living beings. releasing a shocking murderous intent. This is? Qin Feiyang was surprised. This murderous intent could only be compared to when he activated the massacre domain. This is the ultimate meaning of the massacre laws. Massacre domain. The blood ancestor explained. Massacre domain? Qin Feiyang was stunned. It's not your massacre domain, but the massacre domain of hell, the blood ancestor said. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. At the same time, Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, and Dragon King were extremely shocked. Especially Dragon King and the other two. Their faces were filled with disbelief. What exactly was going on? Such a junior, one who was even younger than Qin Feiyang and the madman, had actually grasped two ultimate profundities? When did the ultimate meaning become so cheap that anyone could comprehend it? This must be a dream. Dragon King and the other two looked incomparably ferocious. No matter what, they couldn't accept this fact. Chapter 3857. Boom. The three of them activated their ultimate profundities and charged at Li Feng crazily, trying to break this dream. When Li Zhongxing and the other two saw this, they landed beside Li Feng. Are you guys alright? Li Feng asked with concern. What do you think? Xiao Shui sneered coldly, giving off a cold feeling. Li Feng smiled awkwardly. After being together for so long, he knew Xiao Shui's character. She was fine during normal times, but when she entered battle mode, she was like an iceberg. Boom. The four exchanged glances and attacked together. The 9-flame divine staff and the 3 sovereign weapons also joined the battle. A bloody battle unfolded once again. But the so-called bloody battle was only limited to the Dragon King's trio. With Li Feng's addition, Li Zhongxing's trio was like a tiger that had grown wings. They were completely crushed. In less than 10 breaths, the Dragon King's trio fell into a weakened state, and they looked extremely miserable. But now, they had no choice but to accept the fact that Li Feng had mastered 2 ultimate profundities. They were extremely shocked. How did he do it? He had comprehended 2 ultimate profundities at such a young age. If he was allowed to continue growing, how terrifying would he be? Was their era really coming to an end? No. They were the lords of the Forbidden Zones, the rulers of the Skycloud realm. Trying to shake their position? Dream on. Wu, give me the sovereign weapons. Feng Ho roared. Xiaoyan, give me the sovereign weapons. The Qilin master also roared at young Master Qi. Long Chun. The Dragon King also looked at Long Chun. But the 4 weren't nervous at all. Instead, there was a playful look in their eyes. The 3 races indeed had a lot of sovereign weapons. Moreover, Long Chun had the Celestial Sword, an ultimate sovereign weapon. But their side wasn't weak either. Qin Feiyang alone had more than 20 sovereign weapons. The Skycloud Sea and Land of Buried Gods also had a lot of sovereign weapons. Compared to the 3, Li Feng was more confident. He was well aware of Qin Feiyang's strength. If Qin Feiyang activated his 3,000 clones, even the Celestial Sword would be crushed. Therefore, Long Chun, Qi Xiaoyan, and Princess Huofeng wouldn't dare to take out their sovereign weapons to help Feng Ho and the others. True enough. Princess Huofeng and Qi Xiaoyan hesitated when they heard the Dragon King's order. Long Chun also silently looked at Qin Feiyang with a thoughtful expression. What are you doing? Didn't you hear? Hurry up and give it to us. Dragon King and the other 2 urged. Is there a need to make such a big fuss? Is it that difficult to apologize and admit your mistake? Long Chun sighed helplessly. What did you say? Dragon King looked at Long Chun in disbelief. Although he knew that the relationship between Long Chun and Qin Feiyang was very complicated, he also knew about the grudge between Long Chun and Qin Feiyang. If it was any other time, it would be fine. But now, Qin Feiyang had more and more experts under his command, and his forces were getting stronger and stronger. If this continued, not only the dragons, but even the ice dragons would be threatened. Facing such a situation, Long Chun still didn't make a move? What was going on in his head? Long Chun shook his head and said, The Divine Kingdom is a strong enemy. We haven't even dealt with it, and you're already fighting among yourselves. Is this really okay? Dragon King heard this and couldn't help but be angry. He roared, Earth Dragon Shield, come out. Qilin Divine Sword, come out for this sovereign. Fire Phoenix Sword, I order you to come out and help us kill the enemy. The Qilin Master and Feng Ho also roared. Clang. The various sovereign weapons appeared. But the Frost Sparrow Sword and the Phoenix Bell didn't appear. Because they didn't belong to the Feng people, they didn't need to listen to Feng Ho's orders. As for the sovereign weapons like the Fire Phoenix Sword and the Qilin Sword, although they had already sworn a blood oath to only be loyal to Princess Huafeng and Qi Xiaoyan, they were still loyal to Feng Ho and the Qilin Master for many years. They instinctively felt some fear. Let's see who dares. But at the same time, a calm voice sounded. The owner of the voice was Qin Feiyang. The moment Qin Feiyang's voice sounded, the sovereign weapons of the three races all trembled. None of them dared to help the Dragon King's group. Even the dragon's sovereign weapons didn't dare to make a move without the blood oath. This was because their fear of Qin Feiyang had far surpassed their fear of the Dragon King's group. Who dared to make a move? The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit were originally very worried. They were even prepared to fight, but they didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would be able to make the sovereign weapons tremble in fear with just one sentence. Even they felt ashamed of their own inferiority when it came to intimidating power. No, they couldn't do that at all. With their strength and status, they could easily intimidate the elders of the three races. They could also intimidate the reclusive elders of the three races. However, they couldn't intimidate the sovereign weapons. They were really curious. What had happened in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury all these years? Not only had Li Feng become so strong, but even the sovereign weapons of the three races had changed greatly. When they faced Qin Feiyang, they were like mice that had seen a cat. When they looked at the Dragon King's group again, even the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit, two outsiders, were so shocked, let alone the three of them. Seeing the group of sovereign weapons remaining unmoved, and even emitting fear, their expressions were filled with bewilderment. What are you doing? Didn't you hear? We asked you to help us kill the enemy, roared the three. However, the group of sovereign weapons remained motionless. Princess Huafeng said, Lord Feng Ho, please lower your head and apologize to the fire python. Qi Xiaoyan hesitated slightly before looking at the Qilin Master and saying, Ancestor, you should apologize as well. After all, you were in the wrong in the first place. What did you say? The Phoenix Empress and the Qilin Master glared at them furiously. Qi Xiaoyan sighed and said, as Longchen said, we can't have internal strife before the enemy. Lord Feng Ho, to tell you the truth, before coming to the Nether King's hell, we had already fought an expert from the Divine Kingdom. He was much stronger than we had imagined. Not only is he strong, but he also has 2 mid-grade sovereign weapons. It's hard to imagine how many experts like him there are in the Divine Kingdom. If we don't unite now, I'm afraid not only the human race, but even our 3 races will be exterminated. Princess Huafeng advised earnestly. What? 2 mid-grade sovereign weapons. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit exchanged glances. You don't know? The Blood Ancestor asked suspiciously. We had already retreated before the Divine Kingdom arrived. That's why we didn't see them. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit shook their heads. I see. The Blood Ancestor nodded in realization. It's as she said. This time, the experts from the Divine Kingdom are much stronger than the previous ones. Looks like while we are growing, they are also growing. The Feather Emperor sighed. Wrong. The experts that came from the Divine Nation last time were only the tip of the iceberg, Yi Futian said. In other words, they didn't even fight us for real last time. The Blood Ancestor shook his head. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit couldn't help but look at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. Yes. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded. The Feather Emperor's heart sank. He looked at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and asked, Then why didn't you tell us before? I didn't want to pressure you. I also didn't expect that they would descend on the Sky Cloud realm again. I thought that it was a thing of the past, so I didn't want to mention it again. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. Looks like this time is the true calamity of the Sky Cloud realm. The Feather Emperor murmured worriedly. I don't care what calamity it is. It's impossible for us to apologize. I order you to attack immediately. The Dragon King looked at the Earth Dragon shield and the other sovereign weapons and roared. However, these sovereign weapons still didn't move. How stubborn! Kill them! Li Feng was full of killing intent. With a roar, he charged at the three of them again. Li Zhongxing and the other two followed closely behind. The Dragon King and the other two were already seriously injured. Now they could only take a beating. Dragon blood splattered everywhere. Phoenix blood and Qilin blood dyed the sky. As the lords of the three forbidden lands, when had they suffered such humiliation? They were mad with hatred. They even had the thought of self-detonating and perishing together with these people. Princess Huofeng was burning with anxiety. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I will apologize to the fire python on their behalf. Brother Qin, why don't you give me face? Longchen looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Qi Xiaoyan was silent for a while. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang with a pleading expression. Brother Qin, don't you like the ancient dragon god tea? I will give you those ancient dragon god trees. I hope this matter will end here. Qin Feiyang looked at the three and slowly shook his head. No, everything else can be discussed except this. Feng Ho, just apologize. Do you really want to die? I might as well tell you the truth. We are no match for Qin Feiyang now. Princess Huofeng roared. Now, not only do you have to apologize, but you also have to kneel down and apologize. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. What? Princess Huofeng's gaze trembled. Asking Feng Ho and the other two to kneel down and apologize? He might as well kill them directly. With Feng Ho and the other two's personalities, how could they endure such humiliation? Don't blame me. I gave them a chance before, but they didn't cherish it. Qin Feiyang said coldly. If the three of them had directly lowered their heads and apologized to the fire python from the beginning, he really couldn't be bothered to pursue the matter. But there was no helping it. Some people refused to give up until they were in the coffin, and insisted on challenging his bottom line. Ahem. Tan Wu coughed dryly and looked at Qin Feiyang. Brother Qin, let's forget about kneeling. After all, the Qilin master has taken care of us. Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked at Tan Wu. Just take it as giving me some face. The fire Qilin at the side. Qin Feiyang looked at Tan Wu and the fire Qilin for a long time before retracting his gaze. He looked up at Li Feng and the other three and said, Stop. Consider yourself lucky. Li Feng kicked the three of them and spat a mouthful of foam on their heads. Then he turned and walked out of the barrier with Li Zhongxing and the other two and returned to Qin Feiyang's side. Chapter 38:58. Qin Feiyang looked at the dying Dragon King and the other two lying in the air and said indifferently, Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Come over and apologize to the fire python immediately. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as kneeling down later. Don't want to apologize? Lose your dignity? Then I'm sorry. I have to force you to apologize today. I want to see how much your dignity is worth. The three of them raised their heads with great effort. They were seriously injured, and even raising their heads now was very difficult for them. Looking at Qin Feiyang outside the barrier, their eyes were full of hatred. Lord Feng Ho, hurry up. Princess Huofeng urged. Shut up. Feng Ho glared at Princess Huofeng and gloomily stared at Qin Feiyang. Are you really going to fight to the end? Then let's see if your bones are tougher or my methods are tougher. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and turned to look at Li Feng, saying, Deal with it as you see fit. Okay. Li Feng licked his lips, his eyes filled with a bloodthirsty light. Feng Ho, Dragon King, Qilin Master, what would the flesh and blood of these three Forbidden Zone lords taste like? Although devouring flesh and blood now was no longer helpful to his cultivation, being able to taste phoenix meat, dragon blood, and Qilin bone marrow was also a kind of good enjoyment. Longchen looked at Dragon King and said angrily, Are you forcing me to be angry? Go and apologize right now. Dragon King's gaze trembled. He was actually a little afraid of Longchen. In the end, after struggling for a moment, Dragon King still got up and walked in front of the fire python step by step. Not to mention apologizing, the process of walking in front of the fire python was already worse than death. Hurry up! Longchen shouted. Huff. Dragon King took a deep breath and finally lowered his noble head, saying in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I didn't hear it." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Dragon King immediately clenched his broken dragon claws and roared in a deep voice, "I'm sorry." Qin Feiyang smiled. Li Feng, Li Zhongxing, and Yun Xiang couldn't help but burst out laughing. So what if he was the Dragon King? So what if he was the Lord of the restricted area? Didn't he still have to lower his head and apologize now? Hearing everyone's laughter, Dragon King was on the verge of breaking down. The dignified ruler of the dragons, the strongest existence in the entire Sky Cloud realm, was now reduced to a clown, being wantonly mocked by these ants? He had never felt such humiliation before. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Dragon King, then looked at Feng Ho and the Kirin Master. He said indifferently, "And you two be quick too." The two of them angrily glared at Qin Feiyang. In the end, they slowly walked over with a stomach full of humiliation. They lowered their heads and apologized to the fire python. The fire python's heart also felt much better. Although it had advised Qin Feiyang to let it go before, it was actually sullen in its heart. You are refugees. As refugees, shouldn't you have the attitude of a refugee? And I, as the guardian of hell, seeing a group of strangers appear and ask about their origins, isn't this my duty and duty? I asked you a few words and you fought? How can this be? The reason why it advised Qin Feiyang to let it go was that it didn't want to make things difficult for Qin Feiyang. After all, the strength of Dragon King and the other two was not ordinary. It was afraid of offending them. But now it seemed that it was completely overthinking. Qin Feiyang's current achievements and strength were no longer the same as before. Although the fire python didn't know how strong Qin Feiyang was now, it wasn't difficult to know from the reaction of these divine weapons that he was probably already standing at the top of the pyramid of the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang also paid attention to the fire python's expression. Everything was in his eyes. However, it was enough that he understood. There was no need to say anything else, otherwise it would seem pretentious. Moreover, with his relationship with the fire python, there was no need to say so much. Immediately, he looked at the Dragon King and the other two again, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Compared to before, it was as if he was a different person, and he looked very close. That's right. Now that everyone is tied to the same boat, we are bound together for good or ill. Actually, you are not wrong. You are fighting against the experts of the Divine Kingdom in the Sky Cloud realm, and it is indeed very noble. As for the beings of Hell, Ancient Realm, and Great Qin, although they didn't participate in the battle, their existence is also meaningful, because they are our backing. For example, now that the Ancient Realm has fallen, at least we have a place to rest and recuperate, right? Therefore, when the war starts, whether it is standing at the front line or at the back, they are all noble and worthy of respect. In the future, we must love each other and unite as one to fight against the invasion of the Divine Kingdom. We must not make such things painful for our friends and happy for our enemies again. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply, looked at the three of them kindly, and said with a smile, "What do you think?" The three of them raised their heads and looked at Qin Feiyang. He beat them up, and now he was flattering them? What was this? The Feather Emperor, Little Rabbit, Princess Huofeng, Long Chun, Qi Xiaoyan Shuezu, and the others were also speechless. You are the bad guy, and now you are the good guy. Why are you so good at acting? Anyway, in the future we must unite. I believe that as long as we are united, we will definitely be able to kill gods and demons. Right? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Yes. The three of them gritted their teeth and said. Then, they turned to Princess Huofeng and the others and shouted, "Let's go!" "Where are we going? Aren't you going to ask about our gains in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury?" Qin Feiyang hurriedly asked. The three of them reverted back to their human forms. They clenched their fists and left with solemn faces. They didn't say a word and didn't even look back. Princess Huofeng, Qi Xiaoyan, the white-bearded old man, and Long Chun smiled bitterly and hurriedly chased after them. Because everyone could see that Qin Feiyang was toying with the three of them. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He turned to look at the Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit and asked suspiciously, "Where do they live?" What about the other living beings? The Feather Emperor shook his head and smiled. He looked at the backs of the three of them and said, "Not far, just in the depths of a mountain ahead." What about the other living beings on the 4 continents? Qin Feiyang asked. The Feather Emperor said, "They are all in the Space Divine item." Your Space Divine item is so big? Qin Feiyang was astonished. Of course, it's not just our Space Divine item. No matter how big the Space Divine item is, it can't accommodate all the living beings in the Sky Cloud realm. Moreover, there are so many resources. Feather Emperor rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang and explained, although the spatial divine items can't be compared to your Black Tortoise realm, the advantage lies in the fact that there are more people in the Sky Cloud realm who have spatial divine items. Everyone worked together and took out their spatial divine items, barely accommodating all the living beings and resources. I see. Qin Feiyang was enlightened. Let's go too. There are many people who miss you and are looking forward to your return. The Feather Emperor smiled. Li Feng looked at the Feather Emperor and asked, "What about sister-in-law and the others?" The sister-in-law he mentioned was naturally the mermaid princess. The Feather Emperor said, "Don't worry, your sister-in-law and the others are in the little rabbit's cave. No one is safer than them." Qin Feiyang heard this and couldn't help but feel relieved. He looked at the little rabbit and said with a smile, "Big brother, can you let me take a look at your cave now?" Cave? Don't talk nonsense if you don't know. That's another Space Divine item of Uncle Rabbit. You want to go in? No way. The little rabbit snorted. Stingy. Let me tell you, don't beg me in the future. I can't be bothered with you. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Beg you? The little rabbit was amused. Big brother, some words shouldn't be said too early. Things are different now. Qin Feiyang smirked. The little rabbit's face was full of disdain, but she was really curious. The Feather Emperor shook his head and laughed, urging, all right, let's go. Brother Fire, let's go together." Qin Feiyang looked at the fire python. Okay. The fire python nodded. You still have a lot of face. In the past few years, we have invited him to be our guest more than once, but we were rejected every time. The little rabbit walked in front and said in a strange tone. When the fire python heard this, it couldn't help but shake its head and smile bitterly. Indeed, the little rabbit and the Feather Emperor had invited it more than once, but it didn't have any feelings for them, so it rejected them. Brother Fire, don't mind him. My big brother is like this. Actually, he's a very good person. He values friendship and loyalty. In the past few years in the Sky Cloud realm, if it wasn't for him taking care of us, we would have died many times. Qin Feiyang smiled. Big brother? The fire python was suspicious. Yes. Senior brother Feng Zi and I have become sworn brothers with him. He's the big brother, senior brother Feng Zi is the second, and I'm the third. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Now that he thought about it, he felt that it was a little childish. I see. The fire python nodded and asked, what about the Feather Emperor? Speaking of the Feather Emperor, Qin Feiyang's heart stirred and asked, have you seen him in the Nether King's Hell before? I've seen him once. The fire python said. You've seen him? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. When he entered the 4th layer, I noticed that there was movement in the space-time passage, so I came to check it out. At that time I saw him. However, there was no communication between us. At that time, I was still shocked. There's actually such a person in the Nether King's Hell, and I didn't know about it? The fire python said. He grasps the ultimate meaning of the strongest law, and can interfere with the rules. So if he doesn't take the initiative to show himself, as a guardian, you might not be able to find out. As for his identity, it's even more incredible. Qin Feiyang smiled. What identity? The fire python was curious. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, one of the 3 leaders of the Sky Cloud Realm's human race and my old ancestor. Old ancestor? The fire python was stunned. Yes. His elder brother, the human emperor of the Sky Cloud Realm, is the father of my ancestor, Qin Batian. As for that purple gold divine dragon, you've seen her, right? She's my ancestor's mother. Qin Feiyang pointed at the princess of the divine kingdom and explained. So that's how it is. The fire python suddenly understood and said with a smile, Congratulations, you've finally solved the mystery of your identity and found your true homeland. Thank you. Qin Feiyang smiled, pondered for a moment, and said, But in my heart, Great Qin has always been my homeland and my root. The fire python looked deeply at Qin Feiyang, nodded, and said with a smile, I understand. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let me explain the others to you. That person is the blood ancestor. You've seen him when he entered the Sky Cloud realm, so you should be familiar with him, right? He's also one of the 3 leaders of the Sky Cloud realm, and is as close as brothers with my 2 old ancestors. You probably didn't expect him to have such a great background. And Li Feng. Seeing that everyone was safe and sound and seeing old friends who had been separated for many years, Qin Feiyang was in a good mood and patiently introduced everyone to the fire python. Chapter 38:59. It was a huge mountain. Towering peaks stood tall and majestic. The vegetation was lush, but without exception, they were all a strange blood-red color. In the mountains, there were countless caves. A few of the mountain peaks even had majestic palaces on top of them. This was where the Emperor of Feather and the others were temporarily stationed. At this moment, there were at least tens of thousands of people in the sky above the mountains. There were humans, foam people, dragons, kirans, beasts, sea beasts, and so on. Each of them exuded a powerful aura. They all heard the battle and came out to check the situation. At this moment, their eyes were full of surprise. Whoosh! Accompanied by a sound, Dragon King and the other 2 appeared in front of everyone with Princess Huafeng and the others. It's them. They have returned from the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? When they saw Princess Huafeng and the others, everyone suddenly became excited, including humans, beasts, and sea beasts. Because, since Princess Huafeng and the others had returned, Qin Feiyang and the others must have also returned. Some were happy and some were sad. Among them, for example, Bing Changtian, the patriarch of the Ice Phoenix clan, for example, the patriarchs of the dragons and the kirans. These people were all staring at Princess Huafeng angrily. Over the years, whether they died in the hands of the undead or Qin Feiyang and the others, they had now completely rebuilt their divine souls and bodies. The reason why they hated Princess Huafeng was naturally because Princess Huafeng had been helping Qin Feiyang and the others in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Everyone, let's crusade against this traitor. Bing Changtian's eyes flashed coldly as he shouted. Hearing this, the people of the 3 clans immediately surrounded Princess Huafeng. Seeing this, Princess Huafeng raised her eyebrows. Facing Qin Feiyang, she did not dare to make a move. However, if these people dared to provoke her, they should not blame her for being rude. However, before they got close, they suddenly noticed the injuries of Dragon King and the other 2. What happened? The people of the 3 major races were instantly bewildered. These 3 lords were all injured? And from the looks of it, his injuries were not ordinary. This scene caused them to be in extreme disbelief. Dragon King, Feng Ho Qilin Master, these were the strongest existences in the Sky Cloud realm. Who could hurt them? What's there to see? Go back! Feng Ho shouted at Bing Changtian and the others with a gloomy face. Then she led Princess Huafeng and Daifuku to one of the halls. The Dragon King and the Qilin Master also scolded their clansmen one after another. Then they rushed to the other 2 halls respectively. What happened? The humans, the beasts, and the sea beasts all looked at this scene with puzzled expressions. Boom! At this moment, another powerful aura surged over Bing Changtian and the others who were about to leave all stopped in an instant. They turned their heads and looked over, killing intent surging in their eyes. Because among these auras, they sensed Qin Feiyang's aura. Back in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the foam people and dragons were almost completely wiped out because of Qin Feiyang. Even the Qilin clan had people who died in the hands of Qin Feiyang. For example, Qi Xiong, Qi Yefeng, and a reclusive old antique. So now, their hatred for Qin Feiyang was unprecedentedly strong. As for the humans, beasts, and sea beasts, they were naturally quite happy. The beasts here were basically the beast kings of the land of buried gods. There were also many familiar faces in the human race. For example, the giants of the Demon Hall, Heavenly Hall, Divine Hall, and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Everyone's heart was abnormally excited. Why did they say that they were excited in their hearts? Because now, Elder Hua and the others were still the same as before. On the surface, they were attached to the three major races. In other words, they had been acting all these years. Finally, Qin Feiyang and the others rushed over and stopped on the human side. Feiyang, the deputy leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, couldn't control his emotions and walked toward Qin Feiyang. What are you doing? The three major races are watching. Don't be so excited. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Hall of Famers hurriedly stopped the deputy leader and said secretly. The deputy leader quivered and turned to look at the three major races. Sure enough, no one left. Even the Dragon King and the other two stood silently on the mountain peak, looking at them. He couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, the Hall of Famers stopped them in time, otherwise, their true relationship would have been exposed. Qin Feiyang looked at the deputy leader, and then at Elder Hua and the others. These familiar faces, although it had only been 100 years, it felt like centuries had passed. It's good that everyone is fine. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang smiled. Elder Hua and the others were stunned. What was going on? They weren't going to continue acting for the Dragon King and the other two? Qin Feiyang knew what everyone was worried about and said with a smile, "There's no need to hide anymore." No need to hide anymore? Everyone was stunned. The people of the three major races looked at Qin Feiyang, Elder Hua, and the others with a trace of doubt in their eyes. Qin Feiyang looked at the people of the three major races. Sensing Qin Feiyang's gaze, the golden dragons and the others revealed murderous intent. Qin Feiyang ignored them and looked at the Dragon King and the other two with a smile. Let's lay our cards on the table. From the beginning, we, the Demon Hall, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Heavenly Hall, and He Zhongtian of the Temple were all acting. The Dragon King and the other two raised their eyebrows. What? Acting? Bing Changtian and the others were also surprised. That's right. Back then we didn't have the ability to fight against the three major races, so we had no choice but to pretend to be hostile so that you wouldn't vent your anger on the Demon Hall, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Heavenly Hall, and the Temple of Gods. If you still don't understand, I'll tell you two more things. First, the Blood Dragon Blade was subdued with He Zhongtian's help. Second, when we went to snatch the divine weapons of the Heavenly Hall and the Demon Hall, we did it on purpose so that we would have enough strength to protect ourselves after we entered the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Qin Feiyang chuckled. What? The people of the three major races looked at Elder Hua and the others with bone-chilling gazes. They had been wondering why everything had gone wrong in the past. It turned out that these people were secretly helping them. At the same time, facing the anger of the three major races, Elder Hua and the others couldn't help but feel terrified. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of Elder Hua and the others. His thin figure was like a mountain at this moment. Elder Hua and the others couldn't help but calm down. Qin Feiyang looked at the people of the three major races and said with a faint smile, "Don't look at them like that. You can only blame yourselves for being stupid." "You're courting death," Bing Changtian shouted. "Courting death?" Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at Bing Changtian playfully. He said, "You gave the opportunity to enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure to your daughter, Bing Rinning, but what happened in the end? Not only did she not get the opportunity, but she also lost the Ice Phoenix sword. I'm really curious, why didn't Feng Ho punish her?" "You." Bing Changtian was furious. This was clearly a scar in his heart, but now Qin Feiyang had deliberately brought it up in front of so many people. Wasn't this clearly trying to embarrass him? "Before entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, I might have been afraid of you, but now you're not even qualified to be my opponent. Get lost as far as you can." And Dragon King Feng Ho Qilin Lord. Qin Feiyang looked up at the three and said with a smile, "Don't say that I didn't warn you in advance. Restrain your people. If anyone dares to hurt anyone behind me, I'll make you pay a heavy price. You win. Dragon King gritted his teeth and said. He then led Long Chen into the hall without looking back. What are you still doing here? Do you all think that you're so strong that you don't need to cultivate? Feng Ho also shouted at Bing Changtian and the others. She then led Princess Huofeng and Daifuku into the hall angrily. Get lost. Qilin Lord also glared at Qi Xiong and the others and left with Qi Xiaoyan and the white-bearded old man. I don't accept this. He's only been in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure for 100 years. How can he be so arrogant? Someone shouted. You don't accept this? Li Feng stepped out and looked around. He said domineeringly. Then I'll beat you until you accept this. Arrogant. Someone couldn't help it. It was a reclusive old man of the Feng people. Qin Feiyang and the others were familiar with this person. It was Hua Dahong. Qin Feiyang glanced at Hua Dahong and smiled at Li Feng. Be gentle. After all, he's your future sister-in-law's grandfather. Future sister-in-law. Elder Hua and the others were stunned. White-Eyed Wolf has gotten together with Princess Huofeng. Qin Feiyang chuckled. What? They've gotten together? Elder Hua and the others looked at each other, including the little rabbit and the Feather Emperor. This was completely out of his expectations. Understood. Li Feng nodded and smiled. He immediately activated the ultimate meaning of the space-time law. A vast galaxy fell from the sky, exuding a destructive power. What? This scene shocked everyone once again. It was actually the ultimate meaning of the time array? What was going on? The ultimate meaning of the strongest law could sweep through everyone. Because the strongest reclusive old man in front of him had only mastered the ultimate meaning of ordinary laws. Hua Dahong, the ultimate meaning of the fire law. How could this be compared to the ultimate meaning of the space-time law? And now he didn't have a sovereign weapon. Immediately, he trembled, his face full of fear. Li Feng smiled disdainfully and directly stepped forward. He slapped Hua Dahong's chest. The space-time law surged, accompanied by a scream. Hua Dahong's voice was directly shattered, leaving only his soul. I don't even need to use the ultimate meaning to deal with you. Li Feng waved his hand and the galaxy dissipated. He returned to Qin Feiyang's side without looking back. Brat, you've been in the limelight enough today. The blood ancestor laughed. I'm not in the limelight. I once said that when I master the ultimate meaning, I will always stay by Qin Dage's side. Whoever dares to provoke him will be killed without mercy. Li Feng said. All right. The blood ancestor was helpless. Instead of protecting his master, he ran to protect Qin Feiyang? This was really a sad thing. Looking at the people from the three races, they were no longer as arrogant as before. Their faces were filled with fear. Even such a junior had mastered the ultimate meaning. What about Qin Feiyang? How strong was he now? There was also the madman and the golden-winged wolf king. Why didn't he see them? Did they die in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? Chapter 3860. Let's go. There's no need to waste time with a bunch of random people. The blood ancestor smiled faintly. The Feather Emperor immediately led a group of people and flew towards the peak of another giant mountain. Random people? The people of the three major races couldn't help but feel angry when they heard such contemptuous words. However, when they looked up and saw that the person who spoke was the blood ancestor, their expressions changed drastically. They didn't know Li Feng, but who didn't know the blood ancestor? Moreover, the blood ancestor had been with Qin Feiyang in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. The dragons and some elders of the Feng people had died in the hands of the blood ancestor. Therefore, the people of the Sky Cloud realm had long known that the blood ancestor was still alive. Moreover, he had mastered the ultimate meaning of the law of death. However, they didn't know that the blood ancestor had already mastered the ultimate meaning of the law of time. At the peak of the mountain, there was a newly built plaza. The main hall was located in the center of the plaza. The Feather Emperor stopped and looked at the crowd behind him. There were more than 1,000 people. He shook his head and said, apart from those who are directly related to Qin Feiyang, everyone can go back first. Hearing this, many people shook their heads in disappointment and turned to leave. Soon, there were only a few dozen people left. There were too few people who were directly related to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced at the remaining people. Everyone had suppressed their cultivation to the peak of the 9 heavens realm. After all, they hadn't mastered the ultimate meaning of the strongest law. They couldn't interfere with the descent of the laws like the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit. Qin Feiyang asked, "Where are Zhuo Tiansheng, Elder Yu Lu Zhengyuan and Yueqing?" "They are all cultivating in seclusion in the spatial divine item." The deputy leader smiled slightly. "I see." Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. "Let's go in and sit down." The Feather Emperor called out and led everyone into the main hall. The layout of the main hall was quite simple. There was nothing except for a few chairs. After all, it was temporary and didn't need to be so luxurious. Moreover, with the Feather Emperor's personality, he definitely didn't like such fancy things. "That's all. Bring your own chairs." The Feather Emperor sat on the main seat and smiled at Elder Hua and the others. Then he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Sit next to me." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded and sat beside the Feather Emperor. Everyone took out chairs and sat in a circle around the main hall. The Feather Emperor waved his hand and the doors closed. He glanced at Li Feng, who was sitting beside the Blood Ancestor, and smiled. "Boss, why don't you introduce him?" The Blood Ancestor waved his hand, his face full of pride. Looks like you've picked up a treasure." "What kind of treasure is he? If I didn't nurture him, how could he have such achievements with his talent?" The Blood Ancestor smiled proudly. "Anyway, you just want to say that it's all your credit." Little Rabbit was speechless. After not seeing him for so many years, he was still like this. Of course. Who can deny it? However, Qin Feiyang also contributed. He helped him open the gate of potential a long time ago. The Blood Ancestor smiled. The Feather Emperor looked at Li Zhongxing and the others and asked, "What about these three?" "I'm Li Zhongxing. Qiao Shui. Others call me Old Poison. You guys can call me that too." Li Zhongxing and the others spoke one after another. "Thank you for your help in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." The Feather Emperor stood up and bowed. He was very polite and even respectful, because the three of them had grasped ultimate mysteries and had their own sovereign divine weapons. In terms of overall strength, they were not inferior to him. "Help." Qiao Shui was slightly stunned. She smiled bitterly and said, "We didn't help them. They helped us. Otherwise we would still be undead, let alone leaving the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." "They are indeed undead." The Feather Emperor's heart trembled. Having been to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he naturally knew how terrifying the undead were. Subduing them was even harder than ascending to the heavens. Little Rabbit asked, "In other words, you guys have already gotten rid of your undead bodies?" "Yes." Qiao Shui nodded. "How did you do it?" Little Rabbit was surprised. "Undead bottleneck breaking pill." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Undead bottleneck breaking pill?" Little Rabbit and the Feather Emperor were stunned. They looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "Yes. The undead bottleneck breaking pill is a kind of pill in the pill scripture. It can help undead get rid of their undead aura. Back then, Fire Lotus was reincarnated because of this pill." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I see." The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were enlightened. The Feather Emperor looked at the Blood Ancestor and asked, "Did that primal chaos divine king come to find trouble with you guys?" "Of course. We almost lost our lives in the hands of those demon kings several times. Moreover, we even killed the Queen of Flames." The Blood Ancestor smiled smugly. "What? You guys killed the Queen of Flames?" The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit were bewildered. Elder Hua and the others were curious. They had never been to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure and knew nothing about it. "Yes. But don't worry. All the grudges between us have been resolved." Not only that, but the Primal Chaos Divine King also gave each of us an ultimate law inheritance. The Blood Ancestor smiled. The Feather Emperor and Little Rabbit suddenly stood up. Their faces were filled with shock. "There are inheritances for ultimate laws?" Elder Hua and the others were also bewildered. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. He looked at Elder Hua and the others and smiled. The Sky Bell Divine Treasure is a place that makes people reluctant to leave. There are countless sovereign weapons and laws. Although the inheritances for ultimate laws are rare, we still obtained a few. When we killed the Queen of Flames, we snatched two. The group's breathing quickened. They didn't expect there to be inheritances for ultimate laws. It was indeed a genuine divine treasure. Quickly tell us. The Feather Emperor calmed down and returned to his seat. He looked at Qin Fei Yang and the Blood Ancestor with anticipation. A moment later. What? They actually walked together with the Primal Chaos Divine King, and even obtained inheritances for ultimate laws. In another large hall, Feng He was sitting high above. After listening to Daifuku's story, she stood up. Her voice was filled with shock. Yes. Daifuku nodded and smiled. And thanks to them, I was fortunate enough to obtain an ultimate law inheritance. After saying that, Daifuku took out the Karma Law inheritance. Feng He waved her hand, and the Karma Law inheritance flew to her. After observing it carefully, it was indeed an ultimate law inheritance. I specially left this for your highness. Daifuku looked at Feng He and reminded her. He was really worried that Feng He would take it. Feng He came back to her senses and looked at Daifuku. Then she looked at Princess Huafeng and smiled. Wu, or how do I usually treat you? Very well. Princess Huafeng nodded. When Daifuku heard this, an uneasy premonition arose in his heart. It seems that you remember how good I usually treat you. But this time you've disappointed me. Your grandfather has already told me everything you did in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Before leaving, I repeatedly told you to find a chance to get rid of Qin Fei Yang and the others. But how did you do it? Do you know that not only the dragons and Kirans, but also the people of the Feng people have a lot of opinions about you now? Feng He said. Wu knows her mistake. Princess Huafeng quickly lowered her head and apologized. My lord, you can't blame her highness. Because the situation forced her to do so. Qin Fei Yang is too strong. We had no choice but to join forces with him. Moreover, although we lost the Ice Phoenix sword, we have also gained a lot of benefits from joining forces with Qin Fei Yang over the years. In addition to this Karma Law inheritance, Her Highness has already fused with a Fire Law inheritance. And we also obtained two other sovereign divine weapons, the Frost Sparrow Sword and the Phoenix Bell. It can be said that we have already profited greatly. In fact, even I have obtained the epitome of all the laws. And all of this is thanks to Qin Fei Yang and the others. Daifuku quickly explained. You have already fused with a Fire Law inheritance? Feng He was surprised. Yes. Princess Fire Phoenix nodded and explained. At that time, we encountered the Queen of Flames and joined forces to kill her. We obtained the inheritance of the laws of fire and the laws of thunder. Qin Fei Yang passed the inheritance of the laws of fire to me, and the inheritance of the laws of thunder to Madman. Grandfather should have already told you about this. Indeed he did. However, I still have to hear it from you personally. Let me see the Frost Sparrow Sword and Phoenix Bell you mentioned just now. Feng He said. Princess Huafeng waved her hand, and the Frost Sparrow Sword and Phoenix Bell appeared. Divine might spread in all directions. They are indeed sovereign divine weapons. Good. Very good. Feng He was overjoyed. Even if they lost the Ice Phoenix Sword, the Feng people still earned a sovereign divine weapon. Most importantly, there was also the inheritance of the Karma Law, the ultimate profound. She lowered her head and looked at the inheritance. After pondering for a long time, she smiled and said, Or your current strength is still very weak. Even if you fuse with this inheritance, you won't be able to defeat the experts of the Divine Kingdom. So, why don't you give this inheritance to me? The uneasiness in Daifuku's heart still happened. Princess Huafeng also fell silent. This was what Daifuku left for her. Moreover, this was not a miniature, nor was it an inheritance of an ordinary law. It was the inheritance of the strongest law. Who wouldn't want it? I know, this is unfair to you. But the current situation is very complicated. On one hand, we have to face the experts of the Divine Kingdom, and on the other hand, we have to face Qin Fei Yang and the others. If this sovereign can fuse with this inheritance, then I will master the four ultimate profound. At that time, I will naturally be able to better protect my people. At that time, my phone people's status in the sky cloud realm will also be completely different. After all, my strength is already enough to crush people like the Dragon King, the Qilin Master, and the Feather Emperor. Feng Ho said earnestly. Daifuku hurriedly said, My lord, but this is something that we have risked our lives for. Besides, although Her Highness is currently weaker, her talent is extraordinary. Did I talk to you? Going to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure is the same. Have you forgotten the rules of the Feng people? You have no right to talk here. But before she could finish her reply, a bone-piercing cold current spread out from Feng Ho's body. Daifuku's eyes trembled, and his heart was filled with fear. But looking at Princess Huofeng, who had her head lowered and dared not speak out, he suddenly felt wronged. Was it easy for them to stay in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure all these years? It wasn't easy to obtain an inheritance. How could it be taken away like this? Chapter 3861. Feng Ho looked at Princess Huofeng again and said with a smile, War, you are still young. As Daifuku said, you are talented and have many opportunities in the future. Princess Huofeng sighed and was about to speak. But Daifuku saw Princess Huofeng preparing the dandruff and immediately shouted, My lady, I don't agree. This is the inheritance given to me by the Divine King of Primal Chaos. I can give it to whoever I want. Daifu. Princess Huofeng's expression changed, and she hurriedly looked at Daifuku and scolded him. Feng Ho's face also sank and a terrifying aura rushed toward Daifuku. Daifuku had also thrown caution to the wind and looked at Feng Ho fearlessly. He shook his head and said, My lady, you have really disappointed us. Do you know? The Azure Dragon and the Blood Ancestor also obtained the inheritance of a supreme law. But do you know how they did it? Feng Ho was silent. Let me tell you. The Azure Dragon and the Blood Ancestor both gave their inheritances to their descendants, the Masked Azura and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. Daifuku roared. No wonder I didn't see him. It turns out that he is in the Black Tortoise realm, fusing with the inheritance. Princess Huofeng suddenly understood. Since returning to the Sky Cloud realm, she hadn't seen the white-eyed wolf. Originally, she was a little puzzled. Where did this guy go? Now that she heard Daifuku's words, she knew that the Blood Ancestor must have given him the inheritance and he was fusing with it in the Black Tortoise realm. Come to think of it, the madman must also be fusing with the inheritance. Because at the exit of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, they had extorted 2 inheritances of the Law of Slaughter from Theta Wang's group. Long Chun had 1, Qin Feiyang and the others had 1. Qin Feiyang must have given the inheritance of the Law of Slaughter to the madman. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but feel a trace of disappointment. He looked at Qin Feiyang, the Blood Ancestor, and then at the Azure Dragon. How righteous and harmonious were they. Even if it was an ultimate profound inheritance, they did not have the heart to fight for it. But now Feng Ho was actually fighting with her, a person of the younger generation, for the inheritance. It was better not to compare. Now that she compared herself to him, she felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Then he looked at Feng Ho. At this moment, his face was gloomy as he silently looked at Daifuku. Although she was shrouded in mist and her expression could not be seen, Daifuku knew that Feng Ho was angry, and even wanted to kill him. However, at this moment, he didn't back down. He looked at Feng Ho and continued, Let's not talk about the Azure Dragon for now. After all, he is a virtuous old man. However, in the eyes of the world, the Blood Ancestor is a great demon. As a great demon, he knows how to take care of the younger generation. What about you, Feng Ho? Are you inferior to the Blood Ancestor? How dare you? Feng Ho was furious. How dare he say that she was inferior to the Blood Ancestor? She stepped in front of Daifuku and slapped Daifuku's chest. Daifuku immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out. What's going on? At this moment, Bing Changtian, the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan, Daifuku, whose body had been destroyed, and a group of elders and reclusive antiques ran in and looked at this scene in surprise. How dare you? You even dare to insult me? Are you tired of living? Feng Ho walked towards Daifuku step by step. Princess Huofeng quickly ran over, stretched out her hands, and stood in front of Daifuku. She looked at Feng Ho and said, "Master." Daifuku was confused for a moment. "Please calm down." "Or what's going on?" The patriarch of the Fire Feng people was surprised. "Patriarch? It's her. It's our respected Master Feng Ho. Now she's fighting with Her Highness for the inheritance of the law of karma." Daifuku stood up and pointed at Feng Ho angrily. He looked at the patriarch of the Fire Feng people and said, "What? The inheritance of the law of karma?" Not only the patriarch of the Fire Feng people, but even Hua Daifuku, Bing Changtian, and a group of elders all looked at Feng Ho's hand. "This was given to me by the Divine King of Chaos. I specially left it for Her Highness." "But I didn't expect Feng Ho to take it for herself," Daifuku cried. The group of people was stunned. Daifuku had obtained an ultimate inheritance? They were in disbelief. "Patriarch, don't you want to say something? Her Highness is your daughter." Daifuku looked at the patriarch of the Fire Feng people and shouted. The patriarch of the Fire Feng people's eyes trembled. He looked at the helpless Princess Huofeng and felt heartbroken. The patriarch of the Fire Feng people loved Princess Huofeng very much. If it were someone else, he would have done it immediately. But now, he was facing Feng Ho, the ruler of the Feng people. The fear in his heart had been deeply rooted. How could he dare to question Feng Ho? Bing Changtian looked at the patriarch of the Fire Feng people, and then looked at Feng Ho. He sneered and looked at Daifuku. No matter who gets this inheritance, he should give it to Master Feng Ho. "What did you say?" Daifuku stared at Bing Changtian angrily. As the patriarch of the Ice Phoenix clan, Bing Changtian certainly did not want to see the inheritance fall into the hands of Princess Huofeng. Because once it fell into the hands of Princess Huofeng's status would soar instantly. By then, the status of the Fire Phoenix clan and the Feng people would naturally rise as well. Therefore, whether it was for the entire Ice Phoenix clan or for himself, it was not a good thing. The most important thing was, his daughter Bing Runing had always been the rival of Princess Huofeng. Naturally, he did not want to see Princess Huofeng become stronger and stronger. "I'm telling the truth." "Who gave you everything you have now?" "It's Master Feng Ho. It's Feng Ho who gave you the opportunity to enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." "What? Now that you've grown up, you dare to insult Master Feng Ho? Are you going to rebel?" Bing Changtian snorted. "Rebel?" The patriarch of the Fire Feng people's eyes trembled. He stared at Bing Changtian gloomily and said, "You're being too serious." "Serious?" Bing Changtian sneered and looked at Feng Ho. He cupped his hands and said, "Master Wuer's talent is obvious to all, but her character is not good." "What nonsense are you talking about? Compared to you and your father, Her Highness is many times better," Daifuku said angrily. "Haha. You're desperate, aren't you?" Bing Changtian laughed and looked at Daifuku. He said, "Well, let me ask you. Have you been helping Qin Feiyang in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure?" "Yes, but we're cooperating. It's mutually beneficial." Daifuku nodded. "If it's just cooperation, why did she kill her own grandfather?" Bing Changtian sneered. "When did Her Highness kill her own grandfather?" Daifuku said angrily. Bing Changtian looked at Hua Dahong and said with a smile, "Tell me, was it your granddaughter who forced you to blow yourself up?" "Father." The patriarch of the Fire Feng people looked at Hua Dahong anxiously. Bing Changtian was obviously going to deal with the Fire Phoenix clan. He could not help Bing Changtian at this time. Hua Dahong looked at the patriarch of the Fire Feng people, and then looked at Bing Changtian. Finally, his eyes fell on Princess Huofeng and Daifuku. He also knew Bing Changtian's purpose. He also knew that if his granddaughter got the law of karma, the status of the Fire Phoenix clan would instantly crush the Ice Phoenix clan. However, when he thought of the humiliation he suffered in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, and the arrogant attitude of Li Feng when he destroyed his body, there was a surge of anger in his heart. Yes, in the end. Hua Dahong looked at Bing Changtian and nodded. Did you hear that? Even your own grandfather said so. What else do you have to say? Bing Changtian looked at Princess Huofeng and sneered. Father, what are you doing? The patriarch of the Fire Feng people said angrily. What do you know? Feng Ho has made up her mind to get the inheritance. If we help Wu Er now, we will be doing her a disservice. Huadahong snorted. The patriarch of the Fire Feng people was disappointed when he heard that. Why was the human heart so complicated? Bing Changtian looked at the patriarch of the Fire Feng people and Princess Huofeng and struck while the iron was hot. He looked at Feng Ho and said, She even killed her own grandfather. Isn't that enough to prove her ugly character? I even have reason to suspect that she and Daifuku have been bought over by Qin Feiyang. Bing Changtian, don't slander us. Daifuku was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only did he want to take away their inheritance, but he also slandered them in public. How shameless. Princess Huofeng glanced at the people in front of her and couldn't help but feel disheartened. She turned around and helped Daifuku up. She smiled and said, That's enough. If you have a mind to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. It's just an inheritance. I don't want it anymore. Your Highness, you. Looking at the pale and dim Princess Huofeng, Daifuku felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. I'm fine. Princess Huofeng smiled and looked at Feng Ho. Daifuku was reckless. I hope you can forgive him. We are tired too. We will go and rest first. After saying that, he supported Dafu and walked out of the door. The Frost Sparrow sword and the Phoenix bell followed. Feng Ho said calmly, Rest well if you are tired. But leave the Dominator divine weapons first, including the Frost Sparrow sword and the Phoenix bell. What? Princess Huofeng trembled. Even the Frost Sparrow sword and the Phoenix bell had to be left behind? Fuck. That motherfucker has gone too far. The Frost Sparrow sword and the Phoenix bell couldn't help but be angry. Not only did she want the inheritance, but she also wanted the Dominator divine weapons. Did she really think she was someone important? Princess Huofeng glanced at Feng Ho, and then at the two Dominator divine weapons. She smiled and said, Frost Sparrow sword, Phoenix bell, leave them behind for now. Then, with a thought, the Fire Phoenix sword and the other Dominator divine weapons appeared one after another. Protect the Feng people for me. Princess Huofeng reminded them secretly. Then she helped Daifuku up and left without looking back. Your Highness. Daifuku looked at Princess Huofeng's side profile and couldn't help but sigh. Not only did she not complain when the inheritance was taken away, but she even left the Dominator divine weapons to protect these people. How many people in the world could do this? Was she stupid? She was indeed stupid. He had never seen anyone more stupid than this child. But he understood that Princess Huofeng cared about the Feng people and every clansman. She didn't want the Feng people to fall apart because of her. For the sake of the Feng people and the overall situation, she silently swallowed all the grievances. She actually said that her character was not good? If her character was not good, then was there anyone with good character in this world? My daughter is so pitiful. The Fire Feng people looked at Princess Huofeng's back and felt extremely pained. But he really had no choice. He was just a clan leader. In front of Feng Ho, the clan elders and the reclusive antiques, he had no right to speak. Feng Ho, I'm tired too. Please allow me to take my leave first. He retracted his gaze, looked up at Feng Ho and bowed. Go. Take good care of Wu Er. Although she made a mistake in the Heaven Bell divine treasure, she also brought us two Dominator divine weapons and an inheritance. It's considered as making up for her mistakes. Feng Ho said lightly. Yes. The Fire Feng people nodded. He looked at Bing Changtian and Huadahong and shook his head in disappointment. He turned around and chased after Princess Huofeng. Congratulations, Feng Ho. Congratulations, Feng Ho. Bing Changtian looked coldly at the back of the Fire Feng people, then looked at Feng Ho and bowed with a smile. Feng Ho didn't feel guilty at all. She put away the inheritance with a clear conscience. Then, he looked at the Dominator divine weapons and pondered for a while. He looked at Bing Changtian and said, Your Ice Phoenix clan lost the Ice Phoenix sword. This Ice Sparrow sword is your compensation. As for the Phoenix Bell, Huadahong, it's yours. The other Dominator divine weapons are the same as before. Thank you, my lord. Bing Changtian and Huadahong were pleasantly surprised. They quickly bowed and thanked him. What do you mean? You're giving us away just like that. Do you really think we're goods? The Ice Sparrow sword was extremely angry. Fire Phoenix sword Xiantian fan, this silly girl has suffered so much. Aren't you going to say anything? She has said so. What else can we say? Besides, we have all made a blood oath. We can't go against her wishes. The Fire Phoenix sword sighed. She is indeed a silly girl. The Phoenix Bell sighed, but then it sneered and said to itself, but this matter won't end like this. Think about it. When Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf find out about this, how will they react? The Fire Phoenix sword and the other Dominator divine weapons were shocked. Wait and see. There will be a good show soon. Let these people be happy for a few days. The Phoenix Bell sneered. Feng Ho and the others didn't hear the conversation between the Dominator divine weapons, because they were talking secretly. They were still enjoying themselves and didn't know that danger was coming. Chapter 3862. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. Feng Ho couldn't wait to announce that she was going into seclusion, because as long as she fused with this inheritance, she would be the #1 person in the Sky Cloud realm. At that time, the Dragon King, the Qilin Master, and the Feather Emperor would all have to be respectful to her. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a temptation? Moreover, in order to prevent anyone from ruining her plans, she also ordered Bing Changtian to secretly monitor Princess Huofeng and Daifuku, because the relationship between the two of them and Qin Feiyang and the others was too complicated. At that time, Daifuku revealed his unwillingness and anger. Therefore, it was very likely that the two of them would go to Qin Feiyang and the others for help. This was absolutely not allowed. She even ordered Bing Changtian to kill the two of them without mercy if they really did such a thing. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the others had already explained the situation of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure to the Feather Emperor and the others. Everyone was filled with emotions. They really didn't expect that in just 100 years, so many things would happen. Especially Elder Hua and the others. After hearing about the terrifying level of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, they all rejoiced. Fortunately, they didn't insist on entering back then, because back then, they also had the idea of entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, but Qin Feiyang persuaded them to go back. As for the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit, being able to befriend the Divine King of Primal Chaos and resolve the grudges of the past, as well as obtain so many law miniatures was undoubtedly the most perfect ending. Then how is your strength now? From what Li Feng said before, it seems that you are very powerful now. The Feather Emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Me? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and waved his hand. I'm just like this, no progress. No progress. Who are you kidding? The Feather Emperor rolled his eyes. He had already obtained a Karma Law inheritance, and he still said that there was no progress? It's true. My strength didn't change much. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Is that so? The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit both looked at the Blood Ancestor and the others. Why was it so hard to believe this kid's words? Qin Feiyang glanced at the Blood Ancestor and the others and quietly gave them a meaningful glance. The few of them understood. The Blood Ancestor looked at the Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit. He nodded and said, his gains are indeed not great. Impossible. The Feather Emperor and the Little Rabbit still couldn't believe it. Forget it if you don't believe me. The Blood Ancestor couldn't be bothered to explain. They didn't mention anything about the law of life and death, because they knew that Qin Feiyang was waiting for an opportunity to give these people, including the Dragon King and the others, a huge surprise. Even though my strength hasn't improved much, the old master's strength is incredible. Right now, he's already on par with the Dragon King and the others. Qin Feiyang smiled. Dragon King and the other two had mastered the 3 ultimate mysteries. 2 of them were ultimate profundities of supreme laws, and 1 was ultimate profundities of ordinary laws. The same was true for the Blood Ancestor. The law of slaughter, the law of death, and the law of time. The Feather Emperor looked at the blood ancestor, shook his head and sighed. Right now, our enemy isn't the Dragon King and the others, but the experts of the Divine Kingdom. If what sister-in-law said is true, and the experts of the Divine Kingdom that appeared in the Sky Cloud realm last time were only the tip of the iceberg, then it's hard to imagine how big of a crisis we'll be facing this time. Hearing this, everyone's hearts couldn't help but sink. The blood ancestor pondered for a moment, then looked at the princess of the Divine Kingdom and asked, "Sister-in-law, what was that sword light that suddenly appeared in the land of buried gods?" When Qin Feiyang and the others heard this, they all looked at the princess of the Divine Kingdom. That sword light was extraordinarily powerful. It took more than 20 sovereign divine weapons to shatter it. The princess of the Divine Kingdom was silent for a long time, then sighed and said, "I didn't want to tell you because it would put a lot of pressure on you, but if I don't tell you in advance, I'm afraid that you'll be careless." They heard about it. Everyone's hearts sank. It was definitely bad news. The princess of the Divine Kingdom said, "This sword light came from my father's sovereign divine weapon." What? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. It came from a sovereign divine weapon? One had to know. A mid-level sovereign divine weapon required 10 low-level sovereign divine weapons to contend with it. And now, it was just a sword light. Yet it required more than 20 sovereign divine weapons to contend with it. One could only imagine how terrifying the sovereign divine weapon of the Divine Kingdom's sovereign divine weapon was. Could it be a high-level sovereign divine weapon? The blood ancestor asked. The princess of the Divine Kingdom glanced at everyone, and finally nodded. In an instant, the hall fell into a dead silence. Who would have thought that the Divine Kingdom would have such a terrifying divine weapon? In their eyes, a mid-level sovereign divine weapon was already in existence that was difficult to defeat, let alone a high-level sovereign divine weapon. His heart immediately became heavy. Elder Hua asked suspiciously, "Then why didn't the Divine Kingdom mobilize all of its forces last time?" The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. "Last time, it was just a training exercise for the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom." Training. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Yes. The creatures of the Divine Kingdom are all warlike races. When they discover a new civilization, they will send some of their young people to fight. It's tantamount to training these young people, the princess of the Divine Kingdom said. Training. Harming so many innocent creatures is just a training exercise for them. What is this? Are the lives of so many living beings so worthless in their eyes? Hearing this, not only Qin Feiyang and the other juniors, but even the Emperor of Feathers and the other seniors couldn't help but become angry. They really did view human lives as worthless. Although I live in the Divine Kingdom, I have always been prejudiced against the actions of the Divine Kingdom. I have advised my father more than once, because in their eyes there is only war and plunder. The princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed faintly. Then what about this time? Are they going to slaughter all the creatures of the Skycloud realm? Bunny asked. I don't know. The princess of the Divine Kingdom shook her head. She really didn't know, because all these years, she had been sealed in the land of the buried gods, and had no contact with the people of the Divine Kingdom. How could she know the plans of the Divine Kingdom's master? However, there was one thing she knew. Because of her betrayal, her father must be furious. This time, the Skycloud realm would fall into a real catastrophe. No, not only the Skycloud realm but also the Nether King's Hell, the Ancient Realm, and the Great Qin Empire. If they couldn't stop the army of the Divine Kingdom in the Skycloud realm, these places would inevitably be affected. It's all my fault. If possible, I am willing to use my life in exchange for the peace of this world. Thinking of this, the princess of the Divine Kingdom couldn't help but blame herself and feel guilty. Sister-in-law, you don't need to blame yourself. You and Big Brother love each other. Neither of you are wrong. The one at fault is your father. He is too stubborn and too conceited. Although the purple gold divine dragon is noble, humans are also the leaders of all creatures. Why can't the purple gold divine dragon mate with us humans? The Feather Emperor was furious. This was clearly racial discrimination. Yes. Don't think that this situation is because of you. Didn't you say that the Divine Kingdom is a warlike race? In their eyes, there is only war and plunder? So even if you and the human emperor didn't exist, the Divine Kingdom would still conquer the Skycloud realm. And now it's not the time for anyone to blame anyone. We must unite and overcome this crisis together. The Blood Ancestor also comforted her. Thank you. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom looked at the two with a trace of gratitude in her eyes. We are all family. Why are you thanking me? The Feather Emperor smiled and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. He asked suspiciously, Feiyang, that badge seems to be in Long Chen's hands. What's going on? At the mention of this matter, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. What's wrong? The Feather Emperor became more and more suspicious. The Blood Ancestor shook his head and said, This badge has always been an Ice Dragon's blood contract. So that's how it is. The Feather Emperor suddenly understood. Hearing this, there was no need for a detailed explanation. He already understood. Ice Dragon's blood contract wasn't something they could erase, so they could only give it to Long Chen. Don't worry. Some things can't be forced. The Feather Emperor patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder and comforted him. It's okay. I am a relatively optimistic person. Qin Feiyang smiled. If he really wanted to make a fuss about it, he wouldn't be sitting here so calmly. The Blood Ancestor turned to look at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom and asked suspiciously, Sister-in-law, what did that old man say? He is half your teacher. What's going on? When I was young, he often taught me cultivation. Although I didn't formally acknowledge him as my teacher, I did treat him like one. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom explained. I see. The Blood Ancestor nodded in understanding. Actually, he didn't undo the seal for my own good. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom shook her head. For your own good? This confused Qin Feiyang and the others. Because once the seal is undone, he will have to take me back to the Divine Kingdom. And he knows that when I return to the Divine Kingdom, I will definitely face the wrath of my father, the punishment of my clansmen, and the crusade of the people of the Divine Kingdom. At that time, I will definitely be in a situation where I will die. That's why he has been delaying and persuading me, hoping that I can cut off my relationship with you first before taking me back. Because this way he can plead for me in front of my father and my clansmen. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom sighed. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded. I still say the same thing. Don't take all the responsibility. Although this is not your hometown, we are all family. Look at this kid. Didn't he keep your bloodline power? The Feather Emperor pointed at Qin Feiyang and smiled at the Princess of the Divine Kingdom. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom looked at Qin Feiyang with gratification in her eyes. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Ancestor, it's not just me. There are many descendants of you and the human emperor in the Great Qin. And I'm not the only one who has undergone ancestral awakening. You're not the only one? The Princess of the Divine Kingdom was stunned. Yes. Apart from me and my ancestor, there is also a little brother. He has also undergone ancestral awakening, and might have become the emperor of the Great Qin. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. This person was naturally Qin Haotian. I really want to go to the Great Qin to take a look. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom smiled. After we drive away the Divine Kingdom, I will take you back. Qin Feiyang smiled. Okay. The Princess of the Divine Kingdom nodded, full of expectation. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.